Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Ichigo's Inferno. Flashback, not long after Ichigo was inducted into Squad 1. That's enough. Yamamoto declared loudly, Ichigo panting from exhaustion with almost half of Squad 1 laid beaten around him. Take them to Squad 4 for recovery. Ichigo, with me. The remaining squad members obeyed the head captain's orders as Ichigo joined his teacher, moving to Zenjutsu practice while still weighted down with his Hakuta Kido weights. Yamamoto tossed him a weighted training sword and gave the next exercise. 1,000 swings of each kind. Go. Ichigo got into the ready stance and began to swing the blade, over and over. Hey, Yama-sensei. Ichigo said after 10 minutes of silence, his swings never stopping. I've been wondering something. In the time I've been a Soul Reaper, I've only seen the gates of hell once for a hollow. I know the Zanpakuto is supposed to purify the soul of its crimes as a hollow, but how does it determine one for hell? It doesn't. Yamamoto answered. The Zanpakuto is the catalyst that guides lost souls, setting them on the right path or severing their bonds to the world of the living. Souls that are filled with good intentions or innocence are granted passage to soul society and eventual reincarnation, while souls filled with hate and spite are sent to hell. I thought it was the actions of the living that determined their ultimate fate in the afterlife. Ichigo said, slightly pausing in his swings before righting himself. And those actions are determined by the intent of the person doing them. The dragon returned, continuing to teach his eventual successor. Let me give you 4 people, all of whom have killed. One had slain thousands, threw away hundreds of innocent lives, all out of the desire to bring peace to his world. The second has killed many people as well with the desire of fixing a broken system, but lost his way somewhere down that road. The third has dedicated almost his entire life to the sole purpose of killing someone that is a great threat to all he cares about. The fourth has just as much blood on his hands as the first, but only does so for his own sake. Ichigo stopped swinging as he turned to his master. Yourself, Aizen, me, and Yawatch. Yamamoto nodded as Ichigo accurately guessed who he was referring to, waiting for Ichigo to continue on what he started. You killed many in the war with the Quincy out of the need to protect all existence from being destroyed. Aizen toyed and played with lives to gain the ability to replace the Soul King out of the belief that he could do a better job. I am training for the main purpose of killing Yawatch and prevent the destruction he'd attempt to cause. Yawatch only cares about himself, that's the ultimate difference. Precisely. Yamamoto said with approval, gesturing for Ichigo to continue his swings. As he did that, the ancient captain continued. Our actions define us, but our intent can reveal our true character. Make no mistake, Ichigo, everyone in hell deserves their place there. Hell, first level. Every breath burns. Ichigo mentally roared as the two fell toward the platforms below. The first level gave Ichigo the idea of what he was in for as the pair would descend into the lower levels. The air was nigh impossible to tolerate the necessary act of breathing, feeling so thin of the needed oxygen but thick with heat and decay. Even with all of his power and regenerative ability, Ichigo felt like he was suffocating, and that vulnerability reminded him too much of when Black poisoned him. In that moment Ichigo realized just how brutal hell would be, and that it would only get worse. The two landed on a single white block overlooking the level. As far as the eye could see there were floating, angular blocks that seemed like a sick form of floating Tetris with a grid of blue intersecting paths in the middle of the mass of blocks. Welcome, Ichigo, to the first level of hell. Kakuto said, pointing off into the distance. If we want to find our targets, we'll have to go deeper into hell. The entrance to the next level is far in the distance. He told the hybrid as they jumped down and descended to the blue road, Ichigo seeing hundreds of people among the blocks. All of whom seemed like they snapped a long time ago. I might as well get the Divine Comedy tour while I'm here. Ichigo called out as they landed, earning a confused look from Kakuto. I told Uncle Ryukin that reading that thing was pointless. He sighed as he pointed to the sinners among the blocks. What can you tell me about this level? Ah, the sinner said as he understood Ichigo wants, well if you're that curious. He began running, forcing the hybrid to follow his guide. As you can see, this is the most densely populated section of hell, filled with sinners that are trapped in despair. Within sight of freedom but have given up the struggle to attain it. What do you mean by that? Ichigo asked, locking his eyes forward and not looking anywhere else. I imagine there are a few who are plenty strong. But none are as strong as our jailers, the Kusinada. Kakuto answered, sparing a quick glance around to see if he could sight one that would definitely come for them. No matter how hard we train, we are unable to defeat them. Those around us are those that gave in to the despair brought on by a pointless struggle. Minds that are broken from losing and dying countless time, having given up on their hope and their hatred. Hate is what drives those of us that continue to fight, no matter the odds. No matter how many times we are crushed, beaten, and devoured. In hell, we are resurrected endlessly and continue to suffer. The sinner took another look around. That's odd. Where are the Kusinada? Is that the way to the next level? Ichigo asked, pointing to an end to the road they were on, opening to empty space. Yes. Off there is the way to the next level of hell. He confirmed as they fearlessly jumped into the abyss and through a cloud of purple gas. Squad 15 Infirmary. Make sure he gets his sleep. That's what Urahara said after giving Chad a thorough examination. Orihai managed to heal him up physically, but his spirit still needed time to recover, and he'd likely try to follow Ichigo into hell, which would be a terrible idea. Ichigo's Hakufuku wore off half an hour ago, but Chad was still asleep, leaving everyone else to go about their duties. Jackie remained by his side, making sure he got his rest. Do whatever it takes. Here's some drags that'll knock him out fast. Her eyes drifted to the bottle in her pocket again, just as Chad began to stir. Morning, big guy. She said as Chad scanned his surroundings, slowly sitting himself up. Though, night is probably more accurate. It's only just past midnight. How are you feeling? Like I was blown up half a dozen times. The Foolbringer said, healed but still feeling the aches of his fights. What did I miss? Jackie would say she was conflicted, lying to her friend who had helped her move on from the loss of her family and accessing a new form of her Fullbring, but she was more concerned with him being in good condition. Nothing much. The hell thing is being handled. She said, smoothly telling the half-truth. Kisuke said to make sure you get your rest. She got up and moved to replace one of the drained 4 rature bags that held Kisuke's new restorative medicine that should help Chad recover. Where's Ichigo? He asked, using what skill in sensing he had to feel the leftover presence of multiple sinners and Ichigo's rature all over the city. Why do I feel his Ryatsu all over the city? After that and replacing the bag, Jackie pulled out the knockout drag Kisuke made. Chad, it's nothing for you to worry about. She said, taking in a mouthful of the surprisingly sweet medicine. Are you Sue Dash? She cut him off with a sudden kiss, pouring the elixir into his mouth and making him swallow on reflex. She lingered for a few seconds, slowly tasting him through the medicine. Ichigo would want you to take it easy. She said as she saw the drag take its effect, Chad's eyes becoming tired and unfocused. And I'd like you to be in better shape. Please, for me. Chad made no response as he fell back onto the bed, once again in the embrace of unconsciousness. Jackie stood up, moving her tongue around in her mouth a bit. Spicy. Hell, second level. The pair broke through the clouds and began to hurtle down to a vast expanse of water dotted with dozens of stone water lily structures with massive blades protruding from them. Kakuto grabbed one of his chains and lassoed Ichigo, pulling him to one of the stone lily platforms. Nearly a minute later, they landed on the platform with Kakuto gesturing to the endless expanse around them. And now, for our shortest stop, the second level of hell. He said, letting Ichigo take it all in as they dropped down to one of the solitary stone platforms. Possibly the most desolate section of hell, as there is frankly nothing here. So what? A hell of isolation? Ichigo asked, curious on what suffering this level was supposed to have. Well that, but also this. The sinner said as he grabbed Ichigo's wrist and moved his hand into the water. Instantly, Ichigo felt like he was drowning. That air was drained from his lungs and he couldn't get anything into his chest. After seconds that felt like hours, Kakuto released Ichigo and the hybrid still felt like he was drowning. He cast a shikaho to create enough heat to evaporate the water on him, but it was pointless. He shook his hand enough to fling all the water off, finally regaining the ability to breath. He gulped down mouthfuls of air, ignoring the burning of the air of hell and was just happy to breathe again. This water takes away one's ability to breath, leaving us with the constant sensation of drowning. But we never die, no matter how much that would relieve us. That. Ichigo coughs for a bit before breathing again, that really is a horrid fate. Isolation on these rocks or constant drowning. And we reach this after fleeing our next stop. The third level. Kakuto said, pointing into the water. Through there. Ichigo looked into the water, thinking of how long he'd feel that drowning sensation. Without saying anything, Ichigo released his wrist binds and unleashed half his power. He started to create a sphere of concentrated racier above the water, cutting off his hand and throwing it into the sphere to ready a Gran Ray Zero. Let's do this. Ichigo roared, pulling Kakuto close to him before jumping forth and creating a racier platform at his feet. Gran Ray Zero. He shouted as they were shot into the water. Captain's meeting. The Tagabito's plan to have Ichigo break open the gates of hell is impossible, so there was never any need to worry about that. Urahara said, giving a report on his study and predictions of the threat posed by Ichigo in hell. The gates themselves are indestructible. The danger are the chains breaking. He brought up a simulation with two figures, one in chains and the other with a sword. From our research, the things that keep the sinners trapped in hell are in a perpetually state of growth. Always stronger than the strongest prisoner with every one devoured, and the chains are very much the same. The presentation had the chained figure try to break free but was unable to. Unfortunately, there's no record of anyone at Ichigo's level being down there, meaning he's stronger than the chains. The sword-wielding figure swung at the chained one and the chains broke apart. If Ichigo can be manipulated into breaking the chains, then the true threat emerges. Hell's law is absolute, and if it's broken then the gates themselves will crack and leak out the energy of hell, which will turn the world of the living into hell as well. This is why I wanted that boy to stay out of it. Yamamoto sighed under his breath. While I would like to have faith in my student, this is not something I will chance. Captains Urahara and Kuchiki, I want you both to enter hell and bring him back. Move with all haste, every second counts. Isshin, you and Hitsugaya will set up a containment field around the gate to keep the energies at bay. Dismissed. The commander ordered with a slam of his can, earning a nod from the captains as they went about to prepare for their latest mission. Kisuke and Byakuya left the building and were intercepted by Grimmjow and Ulquiorra, brought in for questioning on the suspicion that they helped Ichigo get into hell. I'm coming with you. Ulquiorra said, making it clear he was not taking no for an answer. I swore to be by his side as his vassal and I will not fail him. The captains turned to Grimmjow, who shrugged. My king as well. That and hell sounds like a party. He said with a savage grin. Byakuya just walked by them, muttering about barbarians while Kisuke held a serious gaze at the pair. I know what you did. He said, keeping it silent. Ichigo told me about your Solita Vista. You also asked if I told him anything about Kakuto. I merely shared my memories. I never lie. Ulquiorra returned, not backing down from the captain. Urahara sighed in irritation. So this is what it feels like to be on the receiving end. He thought, going back to all the times he manipulated a scenario to suit his wants and needs. Fine, you can come along. But Ichigo is going to be punished for his actions, no matter what you two try. He said, leading them down to get ready for hell. Hell, third level. Almost there. Ichigo roared as his lungs burned for air until they burst through the water and into the next level of hell, the water flying off from their speed and air friction. "So what is this one?" he called, gasping for breath as he took in the view. It was a barren landscape filled with rocks and yellow pools of either lava or steaming acid. It was a toss-up of what it actually was, but Ichigo didn't think he wanted to know. Before Kakuto could answer, one of the pools exploded, prompting Ichigo to push him out of the way and onto the ground. They landed with a crash as the yellow liquid came raining down on them. Both men started to cry out in pain, Ichigo glaring at the pool while the liquid settled. "You alright?" he asked as he and Kakuto got back up, slow and labored as they worked through the punishment of hell. "I'll be fine, I'm used to it," the sinner said as he looked over to the healing Ichigo. "What about you?" "I go through that all the time, how are you faring?" Ichigo looked himself over. Most of the upper half of his uniform was melted away, but his wounds did heal. "I heal fast," the hybrid said, wincing as his throat and lungs started burning again with the same feeling as the yellow liquid. "Ah! What is this?" "The third level of hell," Kakuto answered as he looked back to the pool that exploded. "This is where the burning air originates. The evaporation from these pools create the atmosphere of burning air that makes breathing so painful in hell, making us pick between drowning and an air that feels like our insides are melting. Never had one geyser up like that though. I thought for sure a Kusanada was attacking us," he said, becoming concerned about the lack of hell's jailers. "You sound almost disappointed," Ichigo said, looking out into the distance. "Maybe we're lucking out. Sometimes things just go my way." Kakuto looked at Ichigo, then back to the pool, before continuing their way to the next level. "If that's true, then you must be the luckiest person in hell," he said as they ran through the landscape, Kakuto finally recovering. "You said what you did was enough to condemn you to hell, but you did it for something precious to you," Ichigo said, changing the subject suddenly. "What did you do that was so vile?" "I got my sister killed," Kakuto returned, becoming very somber with a look of smiling melancholy. "I was her good-for-nothing brother and she died because of me. She was all I cared about and I dedicated what life I had to avenging her." Ichigo narrowed his eyes as he remembered his teacher's words. "It doesn't matter why I did it, murder is still unforgivable. I'm not just helping you because I want to spite these BSTRDS. I'm helping you because I can't stand anyone who would harm someone's sister." They came to the edge of a steep hillside that Kakuto jumped onto, Ichigo following right behind him. They soon came to a stairway with hundreds of gates and thousands of candle-lit shrines. "Through here is the next level, and the end of our journey. Where our enemies reside. Karakura town. Okay people, let's do this." Urahara called out, getting the team ready. "We've got to bring out the gates, contain them, and get ourselves protected. Every second counts and Ichigo is probably at the bottom levels by now. We can't afford to waste any time." With that, Tensai and the Kido Corps began to summon and bind the gates of hell with assistance from squad. Barrier stress and hell energies are stable, but rising. Mayuri called out from the monitor he was at. "Adding in the samples from the Togabito," he said, prompting Okuiora to pull out 2 vials of pure black substance and opening them. "Gates should be appearing now," the lieutenant called out as the gates of hell reappeared, solidified, and stayed shut. "Stabilized. That's good, but I was hoping they'd be open," Kisuk muttered, thinking of how irritating it was going to be to open them. Grimjow dashed forward, roaring with the intent of busting through and catching up with Ichigo and making sure he got a few hits in. He was then shot back the second he touched the gates. "And how did you see that playing out?" "Hell, 4th level." The pair exited the tunnel, entering the last leg of their journey. Ichigo took in the sights yet again, and started to cough up blood as the burning got to its very worst. All around them were thick clouds of acid from the level above, creating a thick fog throughout the hilly landscape. At their feet was miles and miles of black sand that had trace amounts of erasure and a series of small pale mounds, like a twisted Zen garden of suffering. "This is our graveyard," Kakuto said, sounding empty. No hate, no rage, just pain as he gazed upon the resting place of hell. The fourth level of hell is an endless desert of the crushed and charred bones of the sinners that were finally broken. Even when there is nothing left to break, nothing left to torment, we stay here, eternally imprisoned in this endless nightmare. Even if we manage to get to the world of the living, it's always a matter of time before the Kusanada find us and pull us back into our torment. The two looked on to the endless miles of bone sand as Ichigo thought of how many people were needed to make this while Kakuto pondered his own fate. "Ichigo, I know this is asking a lot, but would you hear me out?" "What is it?" Ichigo asked, looking at his guide. He already had an idea, but wanted to hear it from the man himself. "After we defeat them, could you free me?" The sinner said, immediately putting his hands up. "Not permanently, I just want to see my sister one last time." He sighed. "I hope that helping you would grant me the chance to see her and apologize. After that, I'll return and pay my dues." Ichigo said nothing, shifting his gaze to behind Kakuto, before finally speaking. "Lend me your power and I will help you," Ichigo said before returning his gaze to Kakuto, who looked happy for once. "Don't worry. You have my full cooperation," he said as he started to run, heading for where the other Togabito were. Ichigo stood still, nodding his head just once, before dashing forward to join Kakuto. After running for a bit, the pair saw their destination. A half-circle of standing stones with a massive skeleton in the center with a pair of massive stone fingers reaching out, all looking over a pit of lava. From there, the dead rise back up. Every time a sinner dies we are resurrected in the burning lava. How quickly we come back is heavily dependent on our strength. Ichigo began charging toward the structure, Kakuto right on his tail, moving with great speed. As they neared their destination, a spear of fire came flying at the hybrid. There, standing atop the skull of the skeleton, was the fire user Ichigo fought. He had a wide-rimmed cloak with a similar white outfit to Kakuto, except with squares instead of vertical lines. The other difference was the asymmetrical black pants on his left leg and his mask on his chest to hold his cloak in place with his purple hair covering his left eye. There was another figure next to him, covered in bandages with two parallel scars running down his cheek with tentacles instead of arms. Ichigo and Kakuto dodged the fiery explosive spears until they got to the front of the pit, the cloaked figure gazing down at them. "You certainly saved us the trouble of looking for you, Ichigo," the man on the skull called out. "I am Shuren, a sinner trapped in hell. The plan was to hold your sisters hostage to force you to open the gates of hell and free us, but we might as well do it like this," he roared as he fired bolts of fire at the two, focusing mainly on Ichigo. The attack separated the two as the tentacled Gunjo attacked Kakuto. Kakuto vs Gunjo. "Return to the pit," Kakuto roared as he cut away Gunjo's tentacles that came from his chest. The sinner circled around and unleashed another barrage that struck with explosive force, shooting up blooms of bone dust with every strike. Kakuto dodged and cut them but got clipped a few times, not enough to seriously injure him but enough to draw blood. "Why are you standing in our way?" Gunjo asked, confused that another sinner would try to stop them from opening the gates of hell and attaining freedom for those that still had their minds. "You should be aiding us," he roared, still unleashing his tentacles like a swarm of missiles. "I'd never side with the likes of you," Kakuto returned, creating an energy shield and causing the tentacles to bounce away harmlessly. Gunjo faltered in confusion of the sudden defense, giving Kakuto ample time to close the distance and impale his opponent. "Say goodbye," Kakuto roared, pouring his rapier into his next swing to create an energy blade and destroying Gunjo's body. "I've done my part. Now for you, Ichigo," he thought, a manic grin coming onto his face as he thought of his coming freedom. With Ichigo. Shuren shot spear after spear of fire at Ichigo, but none of them could harm the hybrid. The Soul Reaper was closing the distance fast and deflecting every strike that came close to him. He could do the fast thing and vaporize Shuren with any number of Kido or other Erasure attacks, but if they thought he could free them from hell, then he needed to be more careful in his execution. He held up Kyoka Suigetsu and poised to stab before launching himself forward to Shuren's chest. The sinner himself barely managed to dodge, burning himself a deep gash on his chest as the air pressure shattered the skeleton and stones around them. "Get back here!" Ichigo roared, dashing at the fleeing sinner, who constructed another spear of flames. He tried to block, but Ichigo without half of his seals quickly overpowered him and sent him hurtling toward the ground. Shuren recovered and brought both hands up, shooting fire bolts extremely rapidly in the hopes of stopping his opponent. Ichigo flashed around the field, closing the distance before grabbing Shuren's head and slamming him on the ground before running and dragging him to the base of the lava pit. "Never return!" Ichigo growled as he threw Shuren into the pit of lava. "I was hoping for a bit of a challenge. Are you really disappointed?" Kakuto asked, walking up to Ichigo and looking into the lava. "I thought you wanted to end this as soon as possible." "I did, but I still feel cheated in a way," the hybrid admitted as he got behind Kakuto. "So, how do we do this?" he asked, making Kakuto turn with a smile on his face, barely able to contain his excitement. The sinner moved his hands, grabbing onto each one of his lengths of chain as they gave a dark shimmer of their existence. "To free someone, you must break their chains," Kakuto responded, holding them out for Ichigo to cut through. "Only then is our connection to hell severed. Only then are we freed." He had to resist the urge to scream at Ichigo to cut them and free him from his torment, believing that everything has been going his way. "Just one more question," Ichigo said, raising Kyoka Suigetsu above his head. "How gullible do you think I am?" Ichigo roared, shocking Kakuto as the hybrid Spartan kicked the sinner into the lava. Out of hell. Flashback, Ichigo's descent. First level. The voices of the Kusanada rang in his mind, speaking the crimes of those condemned to hell. The only one he listened to sounded like a warning. Do not trust. That was the one he really thought had any value, the only one that had any form of sense. They kept speaking in his head the crimes of the Togabito and the pleas that he not trust his companion. "I don't trust him," he roared in his mind, trying to silence the cacophony of ancient whispers. "He's a means to an end. I know how hell works." For a moment, there was silence. He had peace as he and Kakuto touched down. As he got Kakuto to tell him about the levels of hell, the voices returned. Did he hear us? Did he speak to us? He may have, his soul is powerful. Reeks of power. He is not a soul reaper. I'm a hybrid. Ichigo answered as he and Kakuto ran for the next level. I've got Hollow and Quincy in me as well. Is that why he hears us? The sinner is looking for us. Can he not see? He's trapped in my hypnosis. I've got this. The hybrid answered as he and Kakuto dropped into the next level of hell, temporarily vanishing from the Kusanada's sight. Third level. Enough. The Kusanada roared as it burst from the burning pool of acid, splashing Ichigo and Kakuto. The sinner must suffer and the living have no place here. Begone hybrid. The jailer reached down for Ichigo, only to be stopped by Zangetsu manifesting and pushing the hand aside. They found a way to sneak out of hell. Ichigo argued, refusing to leave while the present threat still existed. They also seemed to have a plan to escape for good. Hold off until I figure out how to stop it. Ichigo tried to convince the Kusanada, keeping them out of his sight so as to not break his hypnosis on Kakuto. He asked Kakuto about his sins, trying to distract himself while Zangetsu kept the lone Kusanada occupied. He speaks in half-truths. The jailer said as the sinner spoke of getting his sister slain. He's killed too many for it to be revenge. Ichigo said nothing as he and Kakuto descended into the fourth level. Fourth level. He cannot be freed. The Kusanada collectively roared, appearing en masse to crush and devour Kakuto. Breaking the chains will destroy the gates. Hell will poison the world of the living. Ichigo looked a single Kusanada in the eye and said out loud. Lend me your power and I will help you. The Kusanada froze, many sinking into the ground and away from sight. Can he do it? The powers of hell would destroy the soul of a living being. He possesses a strong one. He could do it. Kakuto ran off while Ichigo waited for his answer. Our power is yours. Hell, 4th level, present. He will return. The Kusanada surrounding Ichigo warned as he glared into the lava. You ask for our power and we agree to grant it, but you have not taken it. What are you planning? They asked as Ichigo backed away from the pit, stretching his neck and earning a few pops. This is the graveyard of hell, right? Ichigo stated, feeling the erasure and pushing the fine grains of the bones of crushed sinners with Kyoka Suigetsu. I'm simply going to kill him. Over and over again until he becomes just another spot on this endless field. He felt a Ryatsu spike occur behind him as Kakuto emerged from the lava, tearing away his black bandages to reveal horrific burns on his entire right side. Welcome back. You said you would help me. Kakuto roared, stumbling in pain before pointing his black sword at the hybrid. You said, lend me your power and I will help you. I did just that. Why did you betray me? Ichigo watched Kakuto impassively before raising up his Zanpakuto. I never said that to you. I was speaking to them. Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. Ichigo broke the hypnosis and Kakuto finally saw the Kusanada that surrounded them. Remember when I slammed this blade into your gut? Did you see it pulsate? The Shinigami asked before sheathing the blade. The moment I had even a millimeter of space between you and my sword, I activated its Shirkai. Any who sees Kyoka Suigetsu's release is under a perfect hypnosis, seeing, hearing, all of the senses are subject to it. But I'm not so good with the hypnosis, but I can make you see what I see. And since coming to hell, I made every effort to not see a single Kusanada so you would be blind to them. Kakuto's good eye widened in shock before his face twisted with rage. I thank you for the help, but I never trusted you for a second. You bstrd. Kakuto roared, flashing in front of Ichigo attempting to cut his head off with his blade charged with energy. His blade never met Ichigo's neck as the hybrid threw a perfect Ikatsu into the sinner's center, punching a hole through Kakuto and sending him flying back. His remains landed in front of a Kusanada, who crushed his body into nothingness. Ichigo returned his attention to the pit, waiting to kill the sinner again. What is his sin? He asked, knowing that Kakuto did kill, but his teacher explained that vengeance or protection would not be enough. He needed to know, needed to understand why Kakuto must suffer. Jinjo tried to steal his powers and did murder several soul reapers in his quest to help Foolbringers, no matter how far he went with what he did. The Dark Ones were trying to destroy Soul Society out of spite. Aizen wanted to replace the Soul King and change a broken system, throwing away his humanity in the process to ascend to a higher plane of existence. Yawatch was a parasitic monster that devours the lives of those around him. Was it his way of cooping? Finding a reason to justify their deaths and dehumanizing them to deal with the blood on his hands. What was Kakuto's crime? He did not lie about his sister, nor about avenging her. But he did not stop, he wanted the world to know his pain. He murdered sisters so that others would know how he felt and brothers when they came for revenge. After his revenge, he wanted the world to suffer. That was enough for Ichigo, enough to feel no sympathy or remorse. Kakuto lied to him, tried to destroy the world out of spite, and was every bit the monster that hell tortures. Ichigo. Kakuto roared as he resurrected again, shaking off the lava before charging at the Soul Reaper again. I'll kill you. He charged, grabbing one of his chains to use as a lasso to try and throw Ichigo off balance. The shimmering black metal wrapped around the hybrid's arm, while Ichigo steeled his resolve and didn't budge. 1,000 times you can try. He said, grabbing Zangetsu's trench knife. And it won't be any different. The hybrid roared, yanking the chain and pulling Kakuto onto Ichigo's blade. Kakuto coughed up blood as the blade pierced through him, but he still tried to strike at Ichigo. This is hell, your prison, and you will suffer. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo twisted the blade in Kakuto's gut and swung upwards, destroying his body in a wave of erasure. He's rather stubborn. He commented after the attack ended, leaving him alone with the Kusanada yet again. His hate is all he has left. They said before they grew alarmed. What is this? Too fast. The pain must be unimaginable. Before Ichigo could ask what the jailers meant, a black blade cut into Ichigo's side before impaling itself on the ground. Kakuto was back again, but seemed to be struggling with some great pain. It always took at least a minute for him to come back. Ichigo thought as he healed and Kakuto yanked his blade back to his hand. That was almost 20 seconds. What happened? The next level. The Kusanada sounded out before sinking into the ground, which soon sucked Ichigo and Kakuto into it as well. The journey was swift and they soon entered a new level of hell. The first one that Ichigo thought truly resembled the realm of the Dmet. Rivers of lava filled the landscape, tall columns of stone where the lava poured out, lightning flashing all around, and trees made of bones dotted the land. Here is his prison. They said as Kakuto attacked Ichigo again, swinging his blade by the chains in a desire to strike Ichigo. The hybrid used Hirenkyaku to skate through the air and counter with his Quincy bow. This is the realm where the denizens of hell are truly revived, slowly reformed from the burning lava from bone to flesh. Accelerating the process means he stayed in, drinking the burning restoration into his being. He's burning inside and outside. Ichigo unleashed a licked Regan at Kakuto as the pair continued to descend. Kakuto used his blade and chains to try and block the barrage, but the rain slowly grew more concentrated as Ichigo managed to gather enough erasure to lock himself in place and compress the spread of the arrows on Kakuto's position. Ichigo! Kakuto roared out as the storm of spirit arrows tore him apart. Ichigo himself slowly drifted down to the ground next to a lava river. I gotta tell Yuryu about that. The hybrid said, surprised that he pulled it off. That could be useful. The Kusanada began to appear from the columns, just in time to warn Ichigo that something else was wrong. This is wrong. Defies the law of hell. Watch out. They called out as Kakuto burst out of the river, glaring at Ichigo with a fist ped back. Reflexively, Ichigo raised his own arms while reinforcing with his blood Vene and Hiero, but he wasn't expecting the power behind the attack. The result had a pulse of Kakuto's blue erasure that felt much stronger than before and sent Ichigo flying until he cratered in a column. He's absorbed the erasure of another Togabito. One of the hiding sinners. Ichigo pried himself out of the column, landing just as Kakuto was walking toward him. Absorbed one of the other sinners? Ichigo asked, shocked but not letting that show in any way. I thought you hated those guys. Kakuto shot toward him instantly, swinging his blade with enough force that he created a shockwave of air, forcing Ichigo to the side. He attempted another swing but Ichigo caught his sword hand while his free hand got locked in with Kakuto's, both sides trying to overpower the other. Right now there's no one I hate more than you. He roared, the ground cracking and breaking in their struggle. And I'll stop at nothing to escape from hell. But before I can try that again, I'll be sure you're trapped here with me. He tried to throw Ichigo aside but found himself unable to move the hybrid, whose grip was getting stronger. Did you forget about my seals that I took off? Ichigo asked, tightening his grip on Kakuto. They restrain my power so that I can actually fight instead of crushing my opponents in an instant. And I'll repeat this. Ichigo threw his head forward and bashed Kakuto in the face, nearly ripping off the sinner's arms in the process, making the Togabito stagger back into a lava river. 1,000 times you can try, and it won't be any different. He threw a nameless bala that destroyed Kakuto's body from the waist up while the rest sunk into the lava. If he can absorb the powers of other sinners, does that mean he can break the chains himself? This has never happened before. We have no precedents. But, we also might not need to worry. The jailer said as Kakuto burst out of the lava next to Ichigo, aiming to decapitate the Shinigami. Ichigo managed to block the attack, wincing as lava splashed on him before realizing that Kakuto's attack felt so much weaker than before. The sinner threw a punch, intent on using the power he previously had, only to feel his hand break upon impact. Looks like you don't understand your new ability. Ichigo's hand cackled with energy and electricity. Disappointing. Heido, #Raikoho. Kakuto was instantly vaporized in the Kido blast and tearing a gorge through the land of hell. He's getting it back, isn't he? He already has. Ichigo felt the attack coming from behind and raised his blade to block, only to see a chain of hell grinding against his blade's edge. Seeing the sparks flying from the attack, he dropped his defense and let the chain slam into him, not even noticing the blade until it cut across his being. My Ryastu is so great that my presence can disintegrate people that get close, how is he cutting me? Ichigo demanded, feeling the cut on his chest heal. Kakuto, meanwhile, bore a savage maniacal grin as he injured Ichigo. What's the matter, Ichigo? The sinner yelled out from the top of a column. Worried you might break one of these chains? Are you at my mercy? Ichigo remained silent as Kakuto swung his chains and Ichigo again. The hybrid disappeared in a burst of speed before reappearing before Kakuto. Never. Getsuga Tensho. He said before swinging and destroying Kakuto again. So. Answers? Ichigo asked of the Kusinada. Hell itself is pushing your defense. You have not taken up our power to protect yourself. You are as vulnerable as any sinner. Ichigo groaned in aggravation, finding less and less appeal to stay in hell for any reason. He returns, and with a new power. Ichigo saw Kakuto rise up from the burning pool and raised his hand to unleash a Siro. The blast flew toward Kakuto with the sinner making no effort to move or dodge, only smirking as it closed in on him. He then stood straight up with a mouth appearing on his body and skinged the Racier attack into it. Ichigo looked on in shock as he processed what had just happened. Well. I'm waiting. Kakuto snidely commented as Ichigo shot a relatively weak bala at the Togabito, with a repeat of what happened earlier. Is that all? You are way too confident for someone that's been dying for the last 5 minutes. Ichigo commented as he tried to identify any difference between when Kakuto got a strength boost and this new ability, growling as he failed to find one. Guess I'll just have to be cautious about the fight from now on. Isn't he now vulnerable to our Oswallen? Zangetsu suggested, helping Ichigo strategize. Now there's 2 ways to end this instantly. I'd rather not do that with any sinner. I'm uncomfortable with taking a Kusinada's power as it is. I don't know what hell's power will do to me. Ichigo returned as Kakuto began to fire a rain of Racier blasts at Ichigo. I'll say this. Ichigo thought as he dodged the onslaught of Racier. At least this is keeping me guessing. Kakuto used his own speed to close the distance and swing an energy blade at Ichigo, which split into thousands and spread out to get rid of any escape for the Soul Reaper. Oh crap. The blades raced to Ichigo, who pulled out Kyoka Suigetsu and used it to deflect, cut, and block the thousands of blades coming at him. Kakuto kept up the onslaught, laughing as he put Ichigo on the defensive. The hybrid. Going through the list of Kido spells in his head, brought the Kyber blade of Zangetsu up from behind. The blade levitated as he let go and smacked the hilt, making it spin around in a circle and getting faster and faster. Heido, #10ran. Ichigo roared, getting behind his blade and stopping its spin, which created a powerful tornado that shot toward Kakuto. The energy blades shattered and dispersed as the wind hit them while flying toward Kakuto. The sinner bore a momentary look of shock before smiling and letting a mouth appear on him again, skinging in the Kido. That's not going to work, Ichigo. The man laughed out, letting glee at his victory take over. Ichigo narrowed his eyes at the man before focusing on his chain links. With an idea in his head, he shot forward just as Kakuto finished absorbing the Kido and caught one of the chains. Ichigo let out a roar as he yanked down on the chain, sending Kakuto plummeting to the ground. Ichigo flashed above and breathed in, enhancing his arms with his Hiero and both blood vein and artery. Ryokan. Ichigo roared out, unleashing a barrage of punches that made the entire level tremble. When Ichigo stopped, the already unrecognizable remains were consumed by the lava. Ichigo stretched his upper body, feeling the strain of using one of the more difficult Hakuta techniques, as he waited for Kakuto's next revival. The sinner appeared in front of Ichigo, fist ready to unleash the strength pulse of one of the Togabito that he absorbed. Ichigo met that strike with his own, completely destroying Kakuto's arm. "Did you forget that I'm stronger, even with that strength boost of yours?" he asked, earning silence from Kakuto before Ichigo shot him with a Sokatsui. Now he waited for Kakuto's next attempt. 10 seconds passed, then 20, 30, 40, 50, 1 minute, 2 minutes. "He comes." The Kusanada warned, as Kakuto rose from the lava. "Something has changed," they said as Ichigo shot a low-powered Shikaho at him, only for it to be devoured. Kakuto still had that insane look in his eyes, as if his constant defeats and death have been breaking his psyche and hate is his only driving force, as he shot toward Ichigo. He threw a pulse punch, which Ichigo did block, but the force drove him back by a few inches before Kakuto threw another and another before sending Ichigo flying. "Looks like he's absorbed more than one Togabito this time," Ichigo guessed as he landed on one of the columns, Kakuto appearing in front of him in an attempting to knock him into the lava. Ichigo grabbed his wrist before spinning and doing an over-the-shoulder throw, with Kakuto going right back into the lava. "This might be good training after all," he said, stretching himself out and waited for Kakuto to return again. This time, he came back after 1 minute. "I will kill you," the sinner roared as he shot a continuous barrage of racier blasts. Ichigo dodged while Kakuto's attack followed him until he got pinned between the storm of blasts and Kakuto's use of his chains, slamming the ground with great pulverizing force. "Now you're mine," Kakuto called out with glee, believing that Ichigo was trapped. Ichigo reinforced himself with Hiero and blood vein and took the onslaught with a cry of agony. After several seconds of that, Kakuto stopped to examine his work. Hell would bring Ichigo back, but with this much he'd surely become a denizen of hell, just like him. The moment he got within arm's reach, Ichigo grabbed his ankle and slammed him against the ground. "I'm really disappointed in myself," Ichigo said while pulling himself out of the ground, roughed up but none the worse for wear. "I should have been able to dodge that." He threw a punch at Kakuto, but stopped at the last moment when a mouth appeared where he was punching. "Guessing this means you eat more than just racier," he said, pulling Kakuto up and into a chokehold before snapping the sinner's neck. The body went limp and Ichigo threw it into the lava, destroying Kakuto yet again. "Any of you keeping score?" Ichigo called out to the Kusanada, who continued to watch and wait for Ichigo to finish. That was the 10th kill. Kakuto is getting faster with taking the power. And the restoration after. Ichigo's ears caught a rushing sound as he rolled into a dodge, avoiding several tentacles that tried to spear him. "He only has 2 this time," they advised Ichigo, who threw a light bala at Kakuto which was easily blocked. "Guess it's just strength and those tentacles then," Ichigo thought in relief, gathering racier in his kyber blade before swinging it down. "Getsuga Tensho," he roared, unleashing the destructive attack to a smiling Kakuto. He sprouted more tentacles from his chest, formed a barrier, and had mouths appear on each which began drinking up the Getsuga. Ichigo winced, cursing that he was so easily fooled, and that was one of the more horrifying images that he did not need to see. "And there goes my peaceful night of sleep later. Die!" Kakuto roared out as he brought out more tentacles with glowing tips before shooting down an even greater storm of racier blasts. Ichigo reinforced himself again and began blocking every blast he could, swinging his blade so fast that his arms became blurs. Unfortunately the blasts were so numerous that Ichigo couldn't deflect them all, but he was also so focused on blocking every attack he could that he failed to notice the tentacles Kikuto stuck in the ground. Soon, Ichigo found his arms and legs bound with Kikuto's tentacles and Zangetsu's blades torn from his hands. "Any last words, Ichigo?" Kikuto asked with a sneer. "I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going," Ichigo said with snark while his arms charred and cracked with Kido. Kikuto looked confused as he readied to impale Ichigo with the tentacles. "Okay, obligatory tentacle joke aside, I do have 6. Hado number 96, Ito Queso." The hybrid roared as he blew up, the Kido exploding with the force of a thermobaric nuke and changing Hell's landscape again. Ichigo was in the center of a crater, which was quickly pooling with lava, and the surrounding bone trees and stone columns were reduced to rubble from the pressure of the explosion. Ichigo created a racer platform and ascended above the lava, waiting for Kikuto to return. "My hate will never quell." Ichigo heard Kikuto roar as glowing hot tentacles wrapped around his limbs, trying to drag him into the lava. The sudden pull almost threw him into the burning pool, would have done so too if Ichigo didn't manage to widen his platform at the last moment. It didn't cut the tentacles, but it did give Ichigo ground to stand on. The result had him fall face first on the solid racer as he wrestled against Kikuto's own might, stolen as it was. And, 12. Ichigo roared out himself as he forced himself up and tore the tentacles off, throwing Kikuto into the racer before the limbs severed and he fell back into the lava. The hybrid himself started panting as the constant fights began to take a recognizable toll on him. "He is really stubborn," Ichigo said as he got ready for the next assault. "He has consumed another power. His mind is snapping." Desperation claws at him. The jailers warned as the minutes ticked by, the wait finally ending when Kikuto burst out from the top of one of the pillars. Ichigo stood and waited, believing he was ready for anything. Tentacles sprouted from Kikuto's body as they all aimed at the hybrid. The first shot fired, followed by 100, then 1,000, and continuing as they blasted something new at the Shinigami. Ichigo hesitated, feeling much less racer in the attack, until the first bullet made contact with his blade. The sudden explosion nearly blew Zangetsu's blade out of his hand and the following barrage pelted Ichigo with such force that he lost his control and the racer platform dispersed. Focusing more on stopping the assault, Ichigo threw his hand out and fired a zero. The result had the explosive barrage end, but Kikuto was absorbing the blast. The upside was Ichigo managing enough freedom to shoot himself away from the lava. "Maybe it's time I end this," he thought, analyzing the damage done to him. "Senshimaro will be sad if I ruin these clothes." He was riddled with burns, scuff marks, and tears on his restraining shihakusho and bodysuit. Plus, I was doing this for training. There wouldn't be any point if my Ryatsu is as potent here as out there. He finished before landing in a tumble several meters beyond the lip of the new lake of lava. "Now, where were?" Ichigo asked before noticing that Kikuto vanished. Suddenly the ground erupted as tentacles ensnared Ichigo, tying down his arms as one more appeared above his head before opening its own gaping maw. "Now I'm definitely not getting any sleep tonight," he thought as the mouth came down to devour him. Hado number 11, Suzuri Raiden. Ichigo called out, shocking the limbs into releasing him before the mouth could close. "It's only a matter of time, Ichigo," Kikuto yelled out, revealing himself at the edge of the pool, before bringing out more tentacles to shoot at the hybrid. "I'm getting closer and closer to killing you." He shot another massive continuous barrage at Ichigo, who finally noticed the tentacles that pierced into the ground. Refusing to get caught again, Ichigo shot into the air and began going faster and faster until multiple copies of himself littered the air above Kikuto. "You think this will make a difference?" he roared as he shot wildly after Ichigo, only for the hybrid to appear in front with both fists planted into the sinner's gut. 13. Sukatsu. Ichigo said, causing a massive shockwave of force from where he struck as Kikuto's body broke apart before exploding outward violently. Ichigo panted as he took the moment to relax, Kakuto's revivals taking longer and longer every time he took in more power. How much longer can he keep this up? He asked as a Kusanada appeared behind him. His mind has already snapped. He only cares about killing you. Nothing else matters to him anymore. They said as Kakuto began to rise once more. He roared out in primal fury, no more words, no more civility, just unbridled rage. He sprouted his tentacles which began to fire racier blasts, explosive bullets, and waves of fire. Ichigo got back up and flashed away, planning to cut Kakuto down from behind. But instead of losing Kakuto, the sinner managed to keep track and follow. Getting an idea, Ichigo began flashing all around, making sure that Kakuto kept his eyes on him the entire time. Shatter. Ichigo said, unsheathing Kyoka Suigetsu and making sure Kakuto saw it. Kyoka Suigetsu. The hybrid dropped and turned, visualizing himself still going forward, as Kakuto flew face first into the Zanpakuto's edge. 14. Ichigo said as Kakuto split in half and fell back to the ground. This is getting us nowhere. Ichigo groaned, personally having enough. In the end, this was becoming no different than fighting Zaraki. Just a matter of being faster and stronger than the sinner, and Kakuto is barely holding on to anything but sheer rage and hate at this point. Ichigo sat down on a column that was clear of lava, where the very sinner soon rose up and prepared to attack before Ichigo spoke. I'm done. Kakuto paused, confused as Ichigo relaxed. What? The sinner asked, oblivious to the reappearance of a Kashanda heading for them. I'm done fighting you. The hybrid clarified, sheathing his blades. I'm bored. You're boring me. I only stuck around because I figured I might get something out of this, but it's the same as fighting Zaraki. Only much more whiny. Ichigo continued, infuriating the sinner more and more. You think that you can just walk away? Kakuto roared, slithering a tentacle toward Ichigo along the ground. You think you can just decide when this is over? Ichigo turned to face the Togabito. Yes. The Kusanada raised his hand, Kakuto looking on in surprise and fear as he just remembered why the jailers didn't stop them. I can. As the hand came down, the Kusanada took on a golden glow and began to unravel into spirit threads. All of which began to wrap around Ichigo as he felt the powers of hell pour into him. When it solidified, golden plate armor covered Ichigo's upper body. Segmented along his muscles with skulls on his chest, shoulders, and a now golden hollow mask. No mortal soul has ever before had this power in their hands. The Kusanada said as Ichigo unsheathed his Kyber Zangetsu. Do what you came here to do. Finish this. Give him his sentence. Seal him. They cried out as Ichigo swung his blade down. Kakuto was too paralyzed with shock and fear as the wave of power crashed into him. The chains were destroyed, his skin and flesh were torn away, and he was a charred skeleton, but Kakuto still felt alive. Kakuto, for your crimes, I condemn you to a new punishment. Ichigo said as golden chains burst out from the lava and attached themselves to Kakuto's skeleton, just as he regenerated. He roared out in frustration as he felt his flesh being devoured, finding that the links connected to his flesh resembled the heads of the Kusanada. You've changed the rules, so you can face a new hell. This links will devour you constantly, feeding the Kusanada and strengthening them so that no sinner could ever challenge the authority of hell again. The chains wrapped around Kakuto, putting him into a golden cocoon of Kusanada skulls that chewed away at his being. He began to scream in pain as Ichigo apathetically watched. You will be trapped like this, given the ratio of every sinner that was fully crushed and broken so that you can fuel the Kusanada. And keep hell a one-way street for people like you. Kakuto could say nothing, only howl in agony as the chains even went inside his mouth and into his guts, before he sank into the ground. Into a new and inaccessible level of hell. And now to seal up the holes. Ichigo said as he flew up to the previous level. Let's put these bones to work, shall we? Do it. Ichigo heard a new, darker voice speak out. Putting it out of his mind, Ichigo waved his hand as the dust of the crushed bones rose up and into the upper levels of hell. Ichigo reappeared at the first level with the towering pillars of bones as he waved his hand to reveal the tears the Togabito used to escape. The dust flew to the tears and sealed each one up with a different image of pain and suffering. And that should take care of that. Ichigo sighed, fully relaxing now that hell was no longer passively damaging him. So, who the dot here I guess, are you? He asked, turning to a crimson cloud with glowing green eyes. The king of hell or something? You could say that. A voice replied, though Ichigo remained unimpressed. I am the leader of devils after all. But that is unimportant. You have my thanks, Ichigo Kurosaki. You see, I'm involved with a rather distracting matter that forced my attention away and caused a blind eye to what was happening. Don't expect it to happen again. I only did this to protect my sisters. Understandable. If we ever meet face to face, I hope it'll be under more pleasant circumstances. Whatever. Ichigo dismissed, opening the gates of hell before flying out. The armor dissolved off of Ichigo, though a red circle appeared unnoticed on his back just under the right shoulder blade. The hybrid flew into Grimmjow, causing the two to bash their heads, and fall to the ground. After rubbing his skull, he looked to see Urahara and Tensai giving him a stern glare, Okuiora helping his comrade up, and Mayuri giving an incredibly creepy smile. I'm in trouble, aren't I? Karakura Town. Senna was doing a patrol through the city, making sure everything was normal in the area. The rest of the squad was either doing the same thing or working to stabilize the spiritual imbalances in the city. The hollow threat died down after Ichigo claimed his throne, but that didn't mean anyone could fully relax just yet. Only after everything was put back to normal, not that anything was normal for a good chunk of the year for the Soul Society. She was passing over a parking lot when she noticed a Senkaman opening up, with something wrapped up in a cloak falling out of it. Curious, she went down to investigate, finding a naked green-haired girl. I should probably report this, she said before placing the girl on her shoulders, still wrapped up for her own modesty. Soul Society, Squad 1 Office. Completely irresponsible. Yamamoto yelled, restraining himself from beating his student's skull in with his cane. Shortly after leaving hell, Urahara and Mayuri began a thorough examination on Ichigo. Mayuri got a severed limb and began running tests at his labs while Urahara was performing scans to find any abnormalities. His presence and the requirement of Ichigo staying still was what was sparing the hybrid from a much-deserved beating. You do not need to put everything on your shoulders, and you were the most dangerous risk to hell should you have actually severed one of the chains. I never forgot your lesson, master. Ichigo returned, trying to be respectful in the hopes of calming down the dragon. I was never going to do anything to break one of the chains. The Kusanada themselves aided me. Which was unnecessary. We would have been able to handle the situation. We have methods and protocol for dealing with matters of hell. Your actions introduced an unneeded risk and have shown that you still have not learned an important lesson, DSPLN. The head captain continued as Urahara studies his scans and received a hell butterfly from Mayuri. Maintaining a calm and focused mind is key to not just the battlefield but to everyday life. Yamamoto went to seat himself and continue with his own eternal struggle, paperwork. While we continue with the recovery projects in Siriidii and Karakura Town, you will be back in stasis. Urahara suddenly interrupted, just as Rukia came in with cat doll that had a glass torso. Before anyone could ask, Ichigo began puking up blood and black ooze. Urahara pulled out a syringe before jamming it into Ichigo's neck as his veins turned black. Rukia permitted him into Nappy Kuin, and he was SCKED into the doll. According to my scans and Mayuri's own studies, Hell's power is operating as a toxin to Ichigo's systems. He took the doll and opened a screen on the back, typing away commands and instructions to the device. He needs to fully adapt and acclimate to the power of Hell. But if I had to guess, the only changes this would be to make him immune to Hell. So he will be fine in the end. Genryusai asked, making Urahara nod and easing the old man's concerns. Then I will trust his recovery to you and squad. Do we have Isshin's latest report? Isshin and his squad were placed in charge of exorcism and stabilization to Karakura town after it was switched with a faux copy. The end result caused a troubling imbalance to the region. The last report was just before we left the world of the living. Kisuke responded, having the reports redirected to himself and Mayuri while they were in the world of the living. But there is something odd. The last communique from them to Squad 12 is listed as hours ago. We sent a message back, but didn't hear anything. Urahara said, growing suspicious of the situation. If I may, can I perform a survey on the precipice world? Yamamoto thought for a moment before sighing. The sooner you can fully replicate Garganta used the same way the Vizards and Ichigo use them, the better. He said before waving his hand. You have my permission to conduct your investigation. Gather who you might need for assistance. Urahara bowed and left to make his preparations. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Hollows to Holes. Alright, they should be waking up right about now. Mayuri told Ishido as Yin and Yang began to stir. Their vitals are stable and we can test their capabilities soon. Lord Ishido? Yin asked as she and her twin sat up, the blanket covering their modesty falling to their waist. My chest hurts. Yes, I'd imagine it would. There used to be nothing there. Mayuri returned, looking over some scans. Hey, we have some fine melons you ate. Yang yelled out as the twins finally noticed they were topless. If you have heart attacks, I'm not replacing them. Finding doubles. Karakura Town, Squad 15 Barracks. Anything? Isshin asked Lisa, who was still examining the girl Senna brought in. Hiyori discovered the Senkaman opening and the bubbly Soul Reaper brought in the unconscious girl soon after. Though the communication system with Soul Society was being a little buggy as of late, Hiyori was still able to access the list of Shinigami personnel and was going through that ever since. Still nothing, sir. Lisa answered, ending the keto she was using to sense anything from the sleeping girl, now dressed in a red skirt with a cream cardigan. No erasure, no heartbeat. If she wasn't there in front of us then I would doubt she even exists. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? Senna groaned out, thinking back on her short life. She stayed with her captain to deliver her report and was genuinely curious about the girl. Are we going to have to worry about some crazy exiled clan or a bunch of blank slate souls? I doubt it. Isshin returned, taking a step back to assess the situation. There shouldn't be another Shinenju so soon and I'm pretty sure we've dealt with the last of any notable threats with a grudge against Soul Society. Well, Ichigo mentioned that Otsugai has a lot of Zanpakuto that look like people. Could she be one of those? Senna guessed again, throwing around any possibility she could think of. We'd still feel something out of that. Hiyori said, coming in with the results of her search. And I found a fat load of nothing. She doesn't match any description of active Shinigami and the closest that I could get is a resemblance to an inactive Shinigami by the name of Oko Yashima, a former member of Squad 12. Isn't that the guy that created Project Spearhead? Isshin asked, remembering the controversy from his time as captain of Squad. He noticed Senna's confused look and went on to explain. Shortly after Kiryu Hikifune created the artificial souls that most Shinigami use, there was a proposal to use that same process to create the modified versions that were supposed to be combat capable to help with the shortage of Soul Reapers and the abundance of hollows and lost souls. Khan was one such mod soul. Unfortunately, those jackasses in Central 46 decided against the project after it was already in progress. Hiyori continued, having done her homework on important events she missed or forgot during the exile of the Vizards. Apparently he snapped and tried downloading his brain into something. He's been locked in the maggot's nest in a catatonic state ever since. We should probably look into that case again, just to be sure. Isshin advised, earning a nod from Hiyori as she went back to try and fix the communication system from her end. Okay, maybe we haven't dealt with all the people that would have a grudge against Soul Society. Squad 12, Underground Lab. We'll keep Ichigo in here. Urahara said as Rukia pulled the stasis tube that held the hybrid out of her cat plushie. Be sure to keep him stabilized. And remember that that's an order, Mayuri. He clarified to his lieutenant, getting a dismissive wave in response. Now, I'm not sure what we'll find in the Dangai, but you do remember where the contingency plans are in case of emergency. Correct? Yes, all disguised in a photo album with you and those kids you left with Isshin. The deranged scientist hissed as he wanted to get on with his own research. Urahara kept looking at Mayuri with a measure of expectation, causing the man to sigh. As I, Mayuri Kuratsuchi, take command of Squad 12 in the absence of my captain, I vow that I will not and shall not abuse my authority and keep my experiments to acceptable moral, ethical, and legal boundaries. This satisfied Urahara as he gave a nod and proceeded to pack his equipment for his foray into the precipice world. Try to establish communication back with Squad 15 while I'm gone. The man continued as Rukia placed Ichigo on a shelf. Since there seems to be a big time delay between the two, chances are they might have a clue they've been unable to send back to us. You seem to think that I'm completely negligent in my duties. Mayuri growled. I know how absorbed you can get in your own research, Mayuri. The captain returned. And I'm certain you have the same ideas that I do about what might be happening in the Dangai. The delays in received and sent messages between Soul Society and the world of the living suggest that there's a growing time gap. An easy fix, but how did it get to that point in the first place? Mayuri stated, brainstorming a possible answer. Just as it's an easy fix, it's an easy problem to create. And since the closest thing the Arrancar had to a scientist is dead, that leaves a small number of people that could and would make this problem. Urahara returned as he listed off the necessary qualities for a profile of the suspect if someone did create the issue. First, this person would need an extensive knowledge and understanding of the precipice world. Which should narrow down the list greatly, but with Aizen as a factor, we might not have an idea of who knows what to do and how to do it. Many people would never have pegged Aizen for a scientist at first glance, but the man was careful and precise in his experiments and execution. Second, the person in question would have to have had enough time to set this up and all under our noses until this moment, if whoever did this counted on us finding out about it at all. Mayuri continued. Again, that could be anyone that could slip our notice due to the war preparations. And if there is an outside factor that forced this person's hand, it might be something in the world of the living since Soul Society's baggage always seems to find its way there. Urahara groaned, lamenting how poor of a job the Godai of old did that made so many problems now. 4. Now, focus on re-establishing communication. After that, we should start our investigation with the head of Precipice World Studies, so keep an eye on Kagur Roza and Inaba. Try not to die. I'd be terribly inconvenienced if I had to be captain again. Mayuri finished, wishing Urahara luck in his own way. Precipice World. And this only confirms our suspicions. Urahara sighed as he continued the study. With him was Shinji, Kensei, Byakuya, Toshiro, and their lieutenants assisting in offering additional protection. The exception was that Hisagi stayed with Squad 9, someone needed to be in charge there. Someone is currently controlling the Dangai. The only question is why and how. The other Soul Reapers looked to him with concern, unaware of the slight shifting in the restrictive current. But now that we've established what is currently causing this, we can fix it. Or we can run. The captain said, noticing the presence of the Kotatsu. I vote the latter. Move. Toshiro called out as the Shinigami charged towards Senkaman leading to the living world, as the cleaner was coming in from Soul Society. As they ran, a second Kotatsu appeared and started heading straight for them. Our little rat is controlling the cleaner as well. How did he get two of them? Kensei asked as the two trains of space-time current came barreling toward them. More to that, how do we get out of here? The Vizard asked, getting more and more nervous. I've got an idea, but the success will be questionable. Urahara said, bracing himself. Squad 15 barracks. Well, we've got good news and bad news. Hiyori said, reporting to Isshin. The good news is that the girl woke up and is under watch and guard. The bad news is that communications with Soul Society is still screwy and we still have no idea what or who the hell the girl is. She just keeps calling Yuryu and other men perverts, while refusing to talk to anyone else. She finished, earning a sigh from the captain. No name, no idea what she is, and no identity other than a resemblance to a comatose prisoner from a century ago. Isshin summed up, going over the current matter. Remember when we thought things would calm down after Aizen's defeat while we focus on the Quincy? This is rather annoying. Especially since we still don't know what's going on with the communications system and the precipice world. The girl returned. I do have this one theory about what the girl might be though. As hard as it may be to believe. Before she could continue, Lisa came in. Captain Isshin, we have visitors. She said before the captain's Kisuk's team came in. Should I prepare tea, sir? That would be nice, Lisa. The third seat left to get the refreshments while Hiyori stood next to the squad 15 captain. Captains Kachiki, Shinji, Kensei, Urahara, he immediately flashed to the youngest and held him up with a smile, and Toshiro. To what do I owe the pleasure? He asked. Put me down. The 10th squad captain said bluntly, causing Isshin to raise his eyebrow before doing so. We were investigating a disturbance in the precipice world. The ice wielder started before Byakuya took over. We found that someone was controlling the Dangai and led us into a trap. Shortly after arriving, whoever is behind this sent the cleaner after us. The noble said, looking to Urahara. Thankfully, Captain Urahara figured out a way we could escape the precipice world. Does it have anything to do with those bracelets? Hiyori interrupted, noticing a brass-colored bracelet with a black gem tassel on the left wrist of each captain. Urahara held up the accessory in question and smiled. Yeah, these babies kept us in an isolated time field outside of the influence of the Dangai, rendering the entire trap pointless. The man explained while Hiyori and Isshin shared a glance. Before they could continue, Momo and Ranjiku came in. Captains, we found her. The squad 5 lieutenant said, sounding more confident than anyone heard her before. We found Nozomi Kujo. Is that the girl we have in custody? Isshin asked as Urahara began to explain. She's a rogue Soul Reaper that erased her records and escaped from Soul Society. We suspect that she's involved with whoever is behind the time gap in the precipice world. The captains got up and ready to move. Now that we've found her, we can take her back for interrogations back in the Siriidii. That's not going to happen. The father said, causing the other captains and lieutenants to glare at Isshin. You said it yourself. The Dangai is a dangerous place. The safest place to interrogate Nozomi Kujo is right here, in my barracks. Isshin sent a confident smile to the group. You can watch, but I can't let you guys jump into danger like that. With Yuryu, interrogation room. Let's see. The Quincy started, entering the empty and blank room of Sekiseki Stone. After the reveal of her having a connection to the disturbances and whoever was causing them, she was moved to the prison and interrogation section of the barracks. Nozomi Kujo, records removed from the Soul Reaper database and currently the leading suspect in our current investigations. He looked away from the papers to put his gaze on the girl in question, sitting in the corner and curled up defensively. Things would go a lot easier for you if you cooperated. I told you I'm not talking to any of you. Pervert. She said, calling the lieutenant a perv for the 20th time. Leave me alone. The Quincy sighed, getting tired of being called a pervert, when Orihime walked in. Let me try. She suggested. Thinking he could use the break, Yuryu gave her the files and exited the room. Shinji and Kensei were in the hallway with their lieutenants, giving Yuryu disguised glares before returning their attention to the interrogation room. The only other noises were those coming from Isshin, Toshiro, and Ranjaku catching up, as his captain put it, while Kisuke was reminiscing about his old home and Senna was playing with Mashiro. You still won't get anything out of her, Kensei suddenly said, gaining Yuryu's attention. She has literally nothing to gain from talking and everything to lose if she does. Why would she tell us anything? We probably should risk going through the Dangai again, Shinji said, losing patience with the situation. It's too dangerous to leave things as they are. Yuryu said nothing as he left, though he was keeping tabs on them during their stay. Squad 12, Mayuri's playground. It was practically silent as he made his way into the dark lab, nothing beyond the tapping of his cane, the bubbling of various chemicals, and the blips and whirs of computers and machines. The man searched the off-limits section of Squad 12's underground research facility, looking for one thing of great importance. What would either be the key to an ultimate creation or the single most dangerous thing to his ambitions? He had to be careful, quick, and silent, or the plan he spent so much time on would crumble around him. This was the main lab of Mayuri Kuratsuchi, and he knew precisely how dangerous that man could be. He spent half an hour searching the lab before frustration got the better of him. DMN it. Where is he? He growled before a monitor came on, bathing him in pale light as Mayuri appeared on the screen. Looking for a certain hybrid, are we, Kagur Roza? The lieutenant asked, shocking the man in question. Inaba was wearing a flamboyant yellow robe with a high collar that shielded the back of his head. The other identifier was the man's dual-colored hair, green on the right side and yellow on the left. Lieutenant Kuratsuchi. The traitor returned, glaring at his superior officer. Can't say I'm surprised. I thought highly of you as my captain during your tenure as such. Far more than Captain Urahara. You can't butter me up, Inaba, I've already gathered what you're planning. Mayuri responded, his image shaking as he picked up a camera. And I've got the evidence from your lab as well, he said as the background changed rapidly, evidence of the man using flash step to reach his new destination. Manipulating the precipice world, attempting to trap all of the top Shinigami in there and replace them with Reigai copies infused with mod souls. Ambitious, and you probably would have gotten away with it, or at least make it that much more challenging, if it wasn't for one misstep on your part. And what would that be? Kagur Roza asked, feeling a slight headache coming on. You're the top expert on the Dangai, everyone in the squad knows that. Kuratsuchi answered. Of course we'd suspect you right away. And one of the many contingencies that Urahara made is that his personal computer is linked to everything in the squad. Your misstep was enacting your plan and not covering your footsteps immediately. How is that new nerve gas, by the way? What? Inaba said before getting into a coughing fit, finally hearing a subtle hiss of gas. Those Shiba siblings during the memory incident revealed that our security measures could use some more work, so I've developed a new gas and rigged my lab to release it whenever someone without clearance goes in. I just recently tested it on your Reigai clones, but all that tells me is you did shoddy work. The doors opened again as three masked figures came in. They're still alive, part of another experiment Kisuke and I are working on. If you could escape, that would be most beneficial to us as well. The monitor shut off after that. BSTRD. Inaba cursed, turning to face his opponents, Ishido, In, and Yang. Go mad, Raikou. He yelled out, spinning his cane, which turned into a double-headed Vouge glaive and kept spinning. Before Ishido could attack, Inaba disappeared. Squad 15 Barracks. Nozomi stayed curled in that corner, far from the door, and trying to remember what she knows she had forgotten. She knew the image of the location she wanted to go to, but not where it was. As of yet, she wasn't even allowed out of the building. They did clothe her and feed her, but she had a mission and she needed to get out of there. Especially since she didn't want to be found by a certain someone that sent those Reigai after her. Her thoughts were interrupted as the door was flung open, revealing Renji and Byakuya. You're coming with us, Byakuya stated, his eyes flashing a pale purple along with Renji's. The tattooed man came in to drag her, prompting her to try and run. A practice in futility as the man landed a solid blow to her gut and knocked her out. The two began to quickly make their way out of the building, regrouping with the rest of their team, and reaching the door leading out. Running directly into an ambush of the seated members of Squad 15, Jackie, and Jericho. Jericho! Isshin said as the eye-patched man stepped forward and turned a dial on his chest. I'm going to sleep now. While I am, no Senkaman will open until I wake. He said, before passing out with Jackie catching him and creating a clean bubble. You're pretty good for imposters, but I figured you were fakes from the beginning. Isshin said as he unsheathed his blade while the other got ready to fight as well. Now you are going to tell me what I want to know or this will get very ugly. The man growled. Suddenly a garganta opened up, revealing the real captains and lieutenants. All led by Halibel and her fraction. Don't bother Isshin. Urahara stated as he and the others unsheathed their blades. I can explain everything we need to know. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Deleted scenes. Interrogation. I'm not talking you pervert. Nozomi told the Quincy, who frankly had had enough of the girl. For the last time, I'm not a pervert. He yelled before getting an idea. But I'll show you one. He said, going to the door. Hey Lisa, go nuts with her. He called out, leaving the room. Almost a minute later, Lisa appeared with a long clothes rack filled with different outfits. Strip. She ordered with an emotionless tone, but a burning lust in her eyes. I think I made a mistake. Nozomi thought as Lisa came closer. With a micro bikini and cat ears in her hands. Contingencies. Let's see. No, that's for viral breakouts. Mayuri dismissed, standing in a room full of sleeping doppelgangers while he downloaded all the information from Kagur Roza's computers. I should have had that bookmarked. Civil uprising, cover-up operations for both public safety and public decency. Kisuk, I doubt the whole of the Gotii will lose their clothes for any reason. Ah, here we go. Betrayals. Already did that, in the process of that, in case of clones, see page 742. He shrugged and turned to the page in question. Clone War, let happen if first time with assurance that others would know the difference between original and fake. If second, kill them ASAP, nothing more can be learned. He looked over the bodies. Is this the first or second time? Did the Zanpakuto rebellion count as a clone uprising? Might have something worth learning. He said, leaving the Regai to live as he proceeded to connect to his underground lab and give Inaba a painful reveal. The Regai assault. Squad 15. Barracks. With the reveal of the other Shinigami captains and lieutenants from the Garganta, accompanied by one of the Arankar of Ichigo's court in Hueco Mundo, Yuryu immediately went on the offensive. He used Hirenkyaku to get behind the fakes and activated his Volstagg, firing his feathers to the legs of his opponents. The moment they made contact however, they all popped like balloons, leaving Yuryu confused. Suddenly, the fake Renji appeared behind Yuryu with his Zabumaru in Shirkai and ready to tear into the Quincy's back. Thanks to his wings, Yuryu deflected the attack and Renji immediately attacked his double. Oh no you don't. He roared, swinging his own Zabumaru, only to be stopped by the fake Shinji. That same fake was then sucker punched by Kensei and kicked in the neck by a masked Mashiro, followed by a sickening crack as his neck was shattered. The features dissolved into that of a blank mannequin before turning into dust, leaving only a small red soul candy. Try to leave at least one alive. Urahara called out as clouds of gray ash collided and Yuryu was being chased by a cloud of pink. Kisuk looked to Nozomi, who disappeared. DMN it. He cursed, pulling out a tracker he had prepared during their time in Hueco Mundo. Sailaporo may have died but his main lab was still functional, Kisuk just needed some time. He watched his scanner as it picked up all the clone versions of the Shinigami. The Byakuyas were fighting each other, Kisuk knew something about their pride being involved. The fake Hinamori and Ranjaku were. Already neutralized. In the massive hands of the Trace Bestia's chimeric Ion. The Renjis were fighting, both going into Bankai, though one seemed to have a vastly different one than what he saw of the 6th lieutenant's release. The Vizards had on their masks and made pretty short work of their remaining copies, destroying the fake Kensei and immobilizing the fake Mashiro. For some reason, neither had donned their hollow masks, which Urahara found quite suspicious. Lastly, he saw Yuryu and the fake Toshiro were fighting. The latter was in Bankai to try and match the Quincy Volstang. The ice not lasting long against the vibrating Racier feathers, Yuryu commanded. Looks like your double ran off with Nozomi. Isshin said, trusting his comrades to win against their fakes. I've got Lisa, Chad, and Tatsuki guarding Jackie and Jericho. So long as he's asleep, no Senkaman should open. The Shark Arankar was with them as Urahara kept scanning. Let's hope that applies to a naturally occurring opening to the precipice world. He said as he finally found 2 signatures that were trying to get away from their location. That way. He called out, moving as fast as he could with Isshin and Halibel following close behind. It took them a minute, but they found Nozomi, bound and gagged with Kido, in front of a shrine in the middle of the woods. Though they saw the girl, Urahara found the signal coming from deeper inside the woods. Follow that signal. Kisuk ordered as he passed the tracker to Halibel, who went on ahead as he and Isshin landed in front of the girl. Urahara took out his Beneheim and shot at her with a Racier wave, causing her to pop like a balloon. I'm starting to get annoyed by this. You do know who you're fighting, right? He heard his own voice say before dodging a blade swing aimed at his back. What were you? Isshin gave the fake no time to talk before punching it, only to get another balloon pop. Why did you make those portable Jigai? Isshin roared, getting just as annoyed. Half a dozen Kisuk copies appeared, the 2 Soul Reapers going back to cover blind spots and to stay near the original Kisuk. The air was filled with pop after pop as the 2 fought off the fakes, soon getting caught in the middle of a tornado of blue light that destroyed the rest. When it dissipated, the captains looked up to see Halibel and Yuryu with Nozomi in hand. Surprisingly enough, Kisuk, your double was not nearly as cautious as you. Yuryu said, dropping down to the 2. Everyone else was finishing up by the time I finished my fight with the fake Toshiro. Urahara's double set a series of Kido traps around Nozomi, but he never expected me. And you said helping Ichigo in his early prank wars with me was going to be a useless experience. Urahara said with a smile, making Isshin laugh at the memories. Yuryu had his eye twitch in annoyance, but he had to concede the fact that it let him get the drop on the fake Kisuk. Anyway, let's get back to my shop. I've got a lot to tell you. He said as they moved to return to the base, Nozomi still tied up. You mean MY Squad's barracks, Kisuk? Isshin teased. It's still my shop, Isshin. The former shopkeeper returned. Is this normal? Halibel asked Yuryu, who could only groan. My condolences. Squad 1 Barracks, Yamamoto's office. Kagur Roza Inaba plans to usurp the Godiai and replace them with Reigai copies with mod souls based on the ratio of the current captains and lieutenants. Mayuri explained to the captain commander. He had a secret lab located hidden within the Senkaman Gate where he conducted his alterations to the precipice world and the creation of his Reigai. More than that is his fixation with one, Nozomi Kujo. According to the data I was able to look through while downloading all of his research and findings, she seemed to be the first mod soul. The odd thing is that it seems he also plans to fuse with Nozomi. Do you have any theories as to why that is? Yamamoto asked, clenching his fists as yet another past problem reared its head. And any way to tell the real Shinigami from the Reigai copies? I might have an idea, but I'd need to analyze ratio from both Kagur Roza and Nozomi to fully test it. Mayuri responded. Plus, there is some good news in regards to the Reigai. But that would depend on your point of view. Kagur Roza seems to have an inability to control hollow ratio, so the copies of the Vizards would be without their masks and rendering them far weaker than otherwise. He reached into his Shihakusho and pulled out Ichigo's stasis pod, placing it before Genryusai. Either he thinks Ichigo would be the key to solving that problem or he deemed him to be that much of a threat. It was enough for him to brave going into my personal lab. And considering that Ishido has yet to report his capture, we can assume that Kagur Roza's gone into hiding. And likely plans to unleash the full power of the Regai. Then I shall keep my student safe for the time being. Yamamoto said, taking Ichigo's pod and hiding him away. What would you say is the current threat level? Mayuri took the moment to do some quick calculations before coming to his conclusion. Each Regai, while restrained, should equal the original in strength and ability. Without those restraints, I'd say that there would be a 25% increase to their abilities. Minimum. He answered, earning a tired sigh from the old man. Just the ones he did right, some are thankfully flawed with inaccurate data. That did relieve Genryusai to some degree. Just one more thing, Captain Commander. Depending on the results of this attack, Urahara recommends the revival of Project Spearhead. Explain. Yamamoto growled, not eager to consider bringing back the project but willing to listen to reason. The original project was shut down due to morality issues, as the Central 46 would tell us. Mayuri started. Fear of the project going out of control is more likely. But, as evidenced by this and one other case, some of the mod souls survived the destruction of the project. That one other case was a mod soul that found its way to Urahara and then to the Kurosaki household. That soul was devoted to the family and served as Ichigo's soul after he became a soul reaper. Unfortunately, when the twins were kidnapped by Aizen, the mod soul fought, lost, was broken, and died saving its masters. There was an angry pulse from the stasis pod, as if Ichigo heard the conversation and was less than pleased with calling Kanan it. The idea for the project revival is to help increase our numbers again. Or at least to free up some Shinigami from other tasks and increase efficiency. Yamamoto drummed his fingers against the table, mulling the idea over in his head and whether the risks outweighed the possible benefits. We end this attack first, and then I will decide. The dragon finally stated. Kagur Roza's base. DMN that Mayuri. Kagur Roza growled before getting into another coughing fit. The nerve gas was already causing various muscle failure throughout his body and affecting his nervous system as well. He had to repeatedly use his Raiku's spatial displacement ability to get him to his base as fast as possible before he was rendered completely paralyzed and then die. If he had to assume, he already lost his Regai of Lieutenants Nanao, Kira, Kuratsuchi, and his Nimue copy to the nerve gas that the original used in his main lab. That, on top of the lack of reports back from his Regai in the world of the living, means he lost them as well. To finish his failed plans of the day, Ichigo Kurosaki was still out of his grasp, and who knows when he might awaken from his sleep. Master Kagur Roza. The other Hinamori Regai he had called out as she rushed to his side. Are you all right, sir? You're looking terribly weak. She said, not noticing that Kagur Roza tensed up in anger. Weak, looking weak, nothing truly filled him with more rage and hate than being called weak. Wait here, I'll get Unohana and Aisane. She said, getting ready to retrieve the Regai healers. The moment she turned her back, Kagur Roza cleaved her across her back and ran her through with Raikou. The Regai Hinamori turned to dust and left just her mod soul behind. With that, Kagur Roza collapsed, losing the use of his body more and more. He desperately reached out for the small pill, struggling to grasp it and bring it to his mouth. Even swallowing the small ball was a challenge, but it was one that was rewarded. Reisher erupted from his being like fire until a second him separated from his body, and freeing him from the toxic nerve gas. Nice try, Mayuri Kuratsuchi. Kagur Roza said, chuckling as he rose to his feet and ignoring the gasping pleas of the sacrificed mod soul. But I won't be beaten that easily. He looked to his Raikou, grinning madly as he decided his next action. And my Regai will crush the Godii. Squad 15 barracks. And that should just about do it. Kisuke said, finishing the last steps to connect the barracks communique to a secure line with Squad 12's and, more importantly, with Mayuri. Said lieutenant's face appeared on the monitor as he finished preparations on his end. how's things on your end? He asked as Nozomi watched, left sitting in the corner as the two scientists did their work. Kagur Roza has been exposed and will likely unleash the full power of his Regai copies of the captains and lieutenants. So if you thought that the bracelets the copies wore would be a good indicator of who is real or not, we are out of luck there. Mayuri reported back. On the plus side, the new nerve agent seemed to be effective and my security cameras got us some details of his abilities. As for his plans, he has this fixation on Nozomi Kujo. The girl in question tensed slightly at hearing this. And though this is only a guess, I believe he intends to fuse with the girl. That seems odd, Kisuke returned, doesn't seem to have much point to it either. The very beginning of mod soul creation is basing it off of an existing soul reaper. And if Nozomi is the first, then shouldn't she be based off the first volunteer? Oko Yushima, the head of the project, was the first volunteer. Mayuri answered, remembering that most of this happened after Kisuke's exile. And I wasn't the only one based off of him. Nozomi finally said, speaking up after deciding that she had little other option than to help out. Kagur Roza Inaba was the other. The two of us were made from the two halves of Yushima's personality. You could say that I'm the light to Inaba's darkness. I figured. Mayuri said, happy that his theory was correct. If I had to guess, Nozomi might have something to her that Kagur Roza needs in order to complete himself or another project that Yushima made before his full mental breakdown. Nozomi turned away, not happy with being reminded of the worst memories of the original's life. On other matters, the captain commander is now considering the revival of Spearhead. This shocked the mod soul. He wants to end this fight with our copies before deciding though, correct? Urahara asked, Nozomi turning back to the screen. Indeed, and Kagur Roza will have to either be imprisoned or destroyed. Mayuri answered. I have an idea, but they rely on Nozomi's cooperation. The two turned to the girl, now slightly unsettled with how Mayuri was smiling at her. Spreading the word, living world. So, to clarify, Halibel started, someone else with a grudge against Soul Society has made a clone army of a majority of the top Shinigami and is using them to overthrow and conquer the Soul Society. All the while, trying to capture this girl and fuse with her to revive the original mind behind the creation of mod souls. The assembled captains nodded. And I thought Aizen had the complicated plan. Apache said, somewhere between irritated and amused with the course of events. I'm surprised you actually understood that. Mila snarked to her sister fraction member, sparking another fight between them. How uncouth. Sunsung said, getting involved in the argument. You say that he seems adverse to hollow erasure, correct? The shark asked, earning a nod from Toshiro and Kensei while the other captains watched the fight in amusement. Then the course is clear. Apache, Mila, Sunsung. You three return to Las Noches and bring us back up. Take Nozomi Kujo with you, she's the key to the enemy's plans, she ordered, ending the fight instantly as the three wordlessly obeyed and opened a garganta. I shall go with them to the Soul Society. But know this, Soul Reapers, my king's safety is my top priority. She said, earning an understanding nod from the assembled captains and lieutenants. Lisa, you're in charge. Isshin said as he rose to his feet. Yuryu, you're coming with us. Everyone else, protect the world of the living. Here's the code to know it's us. July 17th. The squad members nodded as Halibel opened her own garganta and the group progressed to the Soul Society. Soul Society. This is Captain Commander Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto. The dragon announced over a system of hell butterflies, sending his message throughout the entire Siriidii and to the 75th Rukon districts in Shinigami police territory. Extremely dangerous and powerful enemies have appeared and infiltrated the Godii, aiming to replace our top officials. Until further notice, all but third seats to captains are ordered to stay inside their homes or squad barracks. This curfew will end when we can confirm that the enemies of the peace are defeated. The result was as he expected. All around him were the sounds of outrage and panic, coming from the Shinigami and the citizen souls. Some immediately complied with his orders, but many had to be forced. Maybe he had to push it just a little bit more. I am giving Kenpachi Zaraki permission to show no mercy, and I will be participating in the coming fights as well. The public outrage turned to fear as everyone scrambled to get to safety. That might have been going a little overboard, head captain. A black cat thought as she made her way throughout the different barracks of the Godei squads. From her findings, Ikaku and Yumichika were replaced, Isane was replaced, Kairaku and Yukitake were replaced by their fakes, even her precious bee was captured by the Reigai. She was going to have a word with her protege about keeping her guard up at all times if she was captured by these fakes. Even Kisuke prepared for his own self being an enemy. Kagur Roza's base. So, war is it? He heard the announcements the captain commander made, and all he could do was laugh. If you want a war with my Reigai Yamamoto, you shall have it. He roared as his remaining Reigai in the base assembled around him. He spun his Raikou around before holding it high, letting his energy pass through the blade in a wave of yellow light. All around him, his Reigai glowed with a pale light that burned like fire to show an increase in their own erasure. This resonated with many other Reigai around the Siriidii that made sure they were in places of secret, unseen by their enemy. I have all I need. I do not fear anyone. Ichigo's inner world. Did you feel that? The hybrid asked, sitting in the middle of a lake with the horizontal skyscraper standing high above him. The water itself was greatly disturbed, rippling madly and prompting Kyoka Suigetsu to crack him on the head. What's going on out there is not important, Ichigo. The spirit scolded as Ichigo groaned in anger before settling back into his meditation. Instantly the waters began to calm, becoming perfectly still and mirror-like. Now, let's begin again. Images formed in the water, memories from Ichigo's life. All of his struggles and trials, each one changing more and more into loses and nightmares. The purpose of this was for Ichigo to gain full calm and serenity in his mind, as a calm and focused mind was the key principle to mastering Kyoka Suigetsu. He was making progress, but it was slow going and Zangetsu was occupied with cleansing and repairing his soul from hell's influence. Chances were, he wasn't going to be able to help. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Getting to Las Noches. A black tear in space appeared in the vast deserts of Hueco Mundo, spitting out a group of Captain and Lieutenant Soul Reapers onto the fine desert sand. The group fell in a confused heap that slowly fumbled to get up, brushing the sand off their clothes as they did so. That was rough. Kisuke said, scanning the area for a certain castle. I forgot how little practice you guys have with Garganta. Frankly, I'm not sure why I risked that. Kensei and several others looked ready to beat the scientist to death. Byakuya was as calm and dignified as ever. Mashiro was going on about a beach party. Now come on, let's find Las Noches. Is that why we came to Hueco Mundo? Shinji asked, deciding to try to calm down before attempting to kill Kisuke. What's in Las Noches? Well, unless Yuryu completely destroyed it, there should still be some material from Aizen's Arrancar scientist's lab. Maybe find Aizen's own workspace there. There. Byakuya suddenly spoke up, pointing in the distance to what was a small building in the distance. Almost completely unnoticeable at this distance. Maybe I should build that lighthouse Ichigo wanted. Kisuke muttered before doing some quick math in his head, then collapsing with exhaustion. And a massive desert transit system. He nearly cried after figuring out just how far from Las Noches they were. Arrancar raffle. Okay, gather up everyone. Jin said, summoning the Arrancar. Kisuke and his group arrived 3 hours after wandering the desert before getting taken to the prisons by Runaganga. It took another 2 for Jin to notice and actually do something about it. Since we don't have 10 top Arrancar, you can't exactly go by Espada. Knights are up for consideration, but you are not to go by Caballeros. Despite being Spanish 4th Knight, people might mistake you for the Disney Bird Trio. Next on the agenda, Ichigo is out of commission and Soul Society might be under attack by copies of the top Shinigami. Combatants. Volunteers? He asked as all 8 hands shot up. Some eager to prove themselves to their king in his absence, others just to fight. Okay, I'm only going to allow one. So I'm going to pull a name out of a hat. The silver fox said, holding up Kisuk's hat. Why did it have to be my hat? Kisuk groaned, ignoring that he was literally the only one that had a hat. Renji's new Bankai. Zabumaru. Renji stood across his Zanpakuto spirit, the fur-covered women and the albino snake kid chained to her, anger and betrayal in his eyes. What was that true Bankai thing? I thought I earned your Bankai a while ago. He said, earning a scoff from the pair. Not exactly. We've been keeping it from you because honestly. What have you actually done to deserve it? The baboon woman asked. The furthest you've gone was finally manning up and fighting for your beliefs. If Zangetsu didn't convince us, you still wouldn't have the Suzabumaru form. The snake admitted, shivering as he remembered the talk Zangetsu had with them. So what changed? The Soul Reaper asked. No way in hell is a crappy knockoff copy going to beat us. The two responded. I don't remember having that kind of ego. Reigai fights. With Yoruichi. She made her way deeper into the forests of the North Rukon 68th district, following a lead to one of Aizen's abandoned labs. Shortly after Mayuri informed the head captain of Kagur Roza's treachery, he requested the Werecat's services. Identify who were still the real deal and who were switched out for fakes, and after doing that mission she sent him the information by Hell Butterfly, before tracking the location of where the real Shinigami were hidden. All of which led her to one of Aizen's abandoned labs, left to rot after finding that it was wiped clean 3 decades before Aizen's departure from Soul Society. She could feel some powerful erasure, signifying a powerful barrier sealing Kido, emanating from the building. She took another step when her shoulder was pierced from behind. Sorry, Lady Yoruichi. Her assailant, revealing to be a Reigai copy of her little bee, said while readying a second strike. But I have my orders. It would never find its mark, as neither did the first strike. All the fake Soifon managed to hit was an after-image of Yoruichi. The real Yoruichi flashed behind her protégé's double and was about to release a devastating kick to her head, when a large spiked ball came flying toward her. Moving quickly, she vaulted over the mace as it came into arm's reach before grabbing onto the chain linking the ball to its hilt. The Reigai of Soifon already next to. A much improved version of Omida. With hair, more handsome, and muscles. It was a shame this was not the real Omida. I think the only thing that threw me off here is that Soifon would never let her lieutenant interfere in her fight. Yoruichi taunted, not at all concerned with her opponents while settling into a combat stance. You must be a failed copy if you need help. You also taught her, as leader of the Onmitsukido, to use every opportunity and advantage possible. The Reigai said before the two disappeared, reappearing at her sides with their weapons ready. Yoruichi twisted around Soifon's spear hand and kicked Marekio's mace into the building, knocking down the front wall. Reigai Soifon spun herself and landed a hook kick on Yoruichi's back, sending her to the ground. Shunko. The copy called out as she threw a punch down at the noble. Not fast enough. Yoruichi whispered as she disappeared, getting behind her bee's Reigai and slamming her fist into Reigai Omida's stomach. The man coughed up bile as he dropped to the ground, with Soifon appearing behind Yoruichi again. Shunko. The Flash Goddess said, activating her own Flash War Cry, and deflecting Soifon's attack. She followed it up with a heavy blow to the ground, while the Reigai dodged. You missed. She said with a smirk, side-kicking Yoruichi through a tree and slamming against another one. Maybe Kagur Roza will reward with a more fitting Lady Yoruichi after he gathers your data. She said, with a hopeful expression. Unaware that her partner was just killed. There is only one of Lady Yoruichi. The Reigai heard her voice from behind, turning to see her original freed and the building she was meant to guard destroyed. The shock was short-lived as a Kido-infused hand pierced through her chest from behind. Had to make sure I didn't hurt my precious bee. Yoruichi said as her protege's Regai turned to dust around her arm. Soifan immediately knelt before her mistress. Lady Yoruichi, I'm sorry for dash, she didn't even finish before said lady punched her on the head. You better be sorry. I thought I taught you to always be on guard. The noble scolded before rubbing her friend's head. Looks like I'll have to retrain you, just like old times. Inside, Soifan was squealing like a little girl. But first, stopping these Regai. Right. The other Shinigami that were in prison have already begun their return to the Seriidii. With Yamamoto. The old dragon twisted his cane about, Ichigo safely stashed in a secret location only he knew, and made his way to the stairway to where the repentance cell once was. It was a wide open area, with the other combatants doing their own thing, where the old man could really cut loose. He felt that old burn from his early days, and with the Quincy return coming, he needed to back into the flow of combat. His patience was soon rewarded when his opponents finally appeared. Regai copies of Kairaku, Yukatake, Unohana, Isshin, Kamura, and the one that he knew to be Kagur Roza. This is truly an arrogant act on your part, Kagur Roza. Genryusai said as he faced his would-be opponents. You know of the coming Quincy War, yet you would try to overthrow the Godii instead of adding to our might? The yellow-robed man wore a malicious grin as he let out a twisted laugh. And who is the one responsible for this Quincy War? Yamamoto. He returned, readying his Raikou while the Regai did the same. But then again, how many of the problems that the Godii faced can be traced back to you? Aizen managing to get away with as much as he did before he defected, though Aizen was indeed careful about his actions. The Dark Ones trying to destroy both the world of the living and soul society, you let them live and let their hate grow in their exile. Kusaka, all because you turned a blind eye to the Central 46's interference. The amnesia incident, how many hollows were in the Rukon that you never really addressed? The Kasumiyaji incident was because you chose to imprison yourself to an unjust system that kept you out of the affairs of nobility. The Zanpakuto rebellion, you should have killed Koga instead of sealing him away. Everything can be traced back to you and your weakness as a leader, and you should retire. But, there is no way I will ever bow before that abomination you call your student. He roared, pointing his blade forward to the old man. In response, Yamamoto moved his cane forward and the Regai of Kamura blew apart, shocking Kagur Roza in turn. I have indeed made many mistakes in my 2,000 years of service. The dragon said as his Haori flew off and his Shihakusho top fell, revealing his scarred and muscled body. And I've grown complacent in my pursuit of preserving this time of peace. But do not mistake my poor judgment for weakness of body, as only the strongest Shinigami is meant to lead as the pillar of the Godii and Soul Society. He unleashed his Ryatsu and Kagur Roza was reminded just how powerful Genryusai is. That flick of the wrist was a warning shot, boy. Run now, if you want to survive more than the next few seconds. He unsheathed his blade and created the ring of fire from releasing his Shurikai. Kamura vs. Soifan Regai. The werbeast wandered about inside a bamboo forest in the Seriidii, searching for one of these enemies that were trying to replace them. It was a natural strategy, aim for the lone animal away from the protection of the pack, so he let himself be the bait to lure his enemies. That, and his Zanpakuto always made for plenty of collateral damage to the surrounding area. No need to cause more damage to the city than necessary. He's been searching for a good while, until he sensed a presence coming from above. He managed to turn just in time to block a sword strike, coming from Soifan. A Regai from the way her eyes glowed. Tenken, thank you for making sure I trained for when I confront grandfather. The wolf said in thanks to his blade spirit, certain that he would have died in an instant otherwise. So, you're Captain Soifan's copy. Then let me test my might against you. He roared, swinging his Zanpakuto down. The resulting shockwave splintered the bamboo trees and made the ground explode, all of which the nimble clone of the captain managed to avoid. She reappeared over the dust cloud, spinning a kick to Kamamura's head. The massive wolf man caught the blow, grunting in exertion from the strength of the attack, before twisting and throwing her away from him. As she flipped around to bounce off a bamboo stalk, Sujin released his shuriken. Tenken! He roared, swinging the spectral blade down as she jumped off the stalk and into his blade. The ground shook and exploded from the force of his blow, leaving a massive gash in the earth with a thick cloud of dust. His ears pricked up as he heard quick-moving footsteps to his side, turning to block but was quickly stabbed in the stomach with the Reigai's own Suzumabachi. Grunting from the pain, he instead chose to focus on his opponent while she was in arm's length. Before the Reigai could get away, he grabbed her head in a crushing grip and threw his arm upward, pulling Soifan's Reigai along with it and throwing her at the ground. He then jumped away and conjured the other arm of his Tenken's power, the flaming bolus. Wasting no time, he spun them as fast as he could before shooting fireball after fireball down at Soifan's location. Each blast grew bigger and bigger as he rained down the attack. The Reigai, as it turned out, managed to escape and get behind him, having some nasty burns as a result. Kamura, having learned from the last time, managed to keep track of her rapier and swing his blade the moment she was in range. The battle ended as the two halves of the Reigai crumbled into dust. I wasted too much energy in this fight, he thought, panting from exhaustion. He turned to the burning forest, thinking on how much he wasted in this battle. With Yamamoto. The flames grew with rage and intensity, fueled by Yamamoto's own rapier, as the battle began. The Reigai of Isshin charged straight at the old dragon, his Enjetsu flaring with his own fire and power, as he fired a Getsuga at the head captain. The rapier attack was cut in twain with a single swing of Yamamoto's blade, making the two halves pass him harmlessly. In front of Yamamoto, he saw a blade coming out of his shadow that was made from Isshin's fire. He barely dodged the attack, getting a cut from his chest to his collarbone, before grabbing onto the blade and ripping Shunsui out of it. He made another swing to kill another of the Reigai, slamming a burning blade into Kairaku's chest and sending him flying in a fireball. Yukitake stuck one of his Zanpakuto into the flames, absorbed it, and redirected it the head captain. He got ready to deflect it, when he heard Unohana finish her Kido spell. Bakudo number 99, Kin. She called out, wrapping up Yamamoto and pinning his arms behind him. The fire slammed into him, roasting him in its heat, but ultimately did not affect the man that mastered those flames. Before the torrent of flames ended, the ancient captain swept them aside as he burst from the fire, and then stabbed his blade into the ground. Enetsu Jigaku. The dragon whispered, a red glyph drawing itself out on the ground as he channeled his power into it. Unohana's Reigai seemed to recognize the attack and leaped forward, drawing her blade with the intent to cut down the dragon. The moment she was in front of him, 7 pillars of flame erupted from the earth. 6 surrounding the combatants and 1 burning Unohana to ash instantly. Is this really the best you impostors have? He asked with Kagur Roza standing out of the battle but trapped by the fire, trembling with rage and fear. With Hitsugaya. The moment the Garganta opened to Soul Society, Halibel flew off with the intention of finding her king, leaving the Shinigami that came from the world of the living to try to find their own purpose in this battle. Each one felt a different battle raging and either paired off or went on their own, Urahara leaving each one with minor Reigai scanner. Toshiro Hitsugaya went his own way, looking to find and confirm Momo's safety. She may have been improving as a lieutenant and a Soul Reaper, but Toshiro still couldn't help but worry. As he charged forward he noticed the other battles raging around him, most prominent being the flames of Ryujinjaka, which distracted him into almost getting hit by a fireball. You. Prove your. Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya. The young captain looked down to see Amagai with Ikaku and Yumachika, all 3 glaring and ready for combat. How can we tell you're not a Reigai? Amagai demanded, pointing his released Raika at the captain. Toshiro was on guard and trying to figure a way out of this dilemma, how to prove that he's the real one when his doppelganger was already destroyed back in the world of the living. Then he got an idea, if he couldn't prove it sufficiently then he could turn it back on them. How do I know you're not Reigai? Toshiro suddenly asked, making the trio look to themselves with short glances. Bankai. Toshiro quickly said, getting covered in a thick mist before gaining his frozen wings and starting the pedal countdown to his true power. Well, how do I know you three are the real ones of you? Amagai raised up his arms, showing his wrists. We don't have those bracelets that the Reigai wear. What about you? He returned, putting the focus back on Toshiro. It's believed that those bracelets were limiters and that Kagur Roza likely had them broken to unleash the full power of the Reigai. Hitsugaya returned, deciding to look at his Reigai scanner that was mounted on his wrist. It revealed 4 Reigai, the 3 in front and the 1 right behind him. The sudden appearance of the one behind him stunned the ice captain long enough for the Reigai to run him through. Thankfully for Toshiro, the ice provided him with enough time to dodge before the blade bit into his flesh. The difference between life and death, measured in 1/10 of a second. You should have just stayed still. Toshiro heard his own voice say, coming face to face with another Reigai of him, likewise in Bankai. It would have been so much easier on you if you did. Hitsugaya's mind was racing. Didn't his Reigai die already? Were there multiple copies of him? How many others had multiple Reigai copies of themselves? This had taken a bad situation and made it worse. Some of the Reigai were meant to be stronger than their originals and there are likely many more of them. Hitsugaya was pulled out of his thoughts when Amagai threw another fireball, slamming against one of the frozen wings. The heat from that attack is melting my form. He noticed as Amagai threw more fireballs, one after the other. DMN my still immature power. Toshiro aimed to fly away, before his ankle was wrapped in glowing vines from Yumachika and leaving him vulnerable. The Reigai took advantage of the chance and attacked, Ikaku and Hitsugaya cutting at the captain with Amagai continuing his burning assault and Yumachika draining Racier. Toshiro had to quickly block with sword and icy wing, regenerating the damage done to his dragon form, while feeling the drain of his Racier. He froze his ankle, and the vine with it, while trying to gather the moisture in the air for something he hoped would turn the tide. Unfortunately, his Reigai seemed to understand what he was planning. Hayaten Hayakaso. His Reigai said, causing the snow fall of the technique. Toshiro tried to flee, but more vines wrapped around him and drained more of his Racier. The captain could only watch helplessly as the snow dropped on him, sprouting ice flowers that soon engulfed his entire being. You were never able to protect anyone, let alone Momo. The Reigai of Toshiro mocked. Leave her to me, she'll be fine. Captain Hitsugaya. Amagai spoke up, gaining the Reigai's attention, to find that they were surrounded by massive pillars of ice. Zanhyo Ninjio. When? The Reigai demanded just before the pillars began to converge on them rapidly. Bankai. Raika Goen Kaku. Amagai roared, gaining his massive blade while Ikaku did the same. They began their own assault against the ice, Amagai melting with his blade and Ikaku breaking the ice with his and Yumachika uses Kido while Hitsugaya wrestles with control over the ice. The battle soon ends with the ice pillars falling apart but before they could breathe a sigh of victory, they all froze instantly. Getting faster at getting rid of those petals. An older Hitsugaya said, watching the frozen Reigai fall and shatter on the ground. But not fast enough. With Yamamoto. Yamamoto recognized the ache of combat as he continued to clash with the Reigai, constantly dodging and blocking attacks coming from all around him with Kairaku, having his flames redirected back to him from Yukatake, and the brute power from Isshin. To his benefit, with the Reigai Uno Hana gone, they would be unable to heal and recover. This was a battle of attrition, but 3 captain-class Shinigami was still wearing on the old dragon. Even as a Reigai, Isshin is headstrong and dives into battle. He thought as the Reigai in question tried to fire a Getsuga at the dragon, only for Yamamoto to bat the blade aside and deflect the destructive wave of Racier. From above, Shunsui appeared and was about to swing one of his blades. Takaoni. Yamamoto thought, identifying the game that the Reigai was playing. In response, he quickly jumped higher than the Reigai and swung his blade down, only for it to pass through an afterimage. Kajiokuri. He thought in surprise as the real Reigai appeared beneath him, ready to attack. Irony, black. the Reigai said before he made contact with Yamamoto's foot, kicking the blade aside and shunsway with it. The old man slightly winced as he felt the damage from the amount of black he wore, but minimized it from not letting it contact his black clothing. Taimatsu. He growled before swinging his blade and unleashing a torrent of flames at the Reigai. Once again, Yukitake appeared to absorb the attack. As he did, Yamamoto flashed behind the Reigai. White. Ikatsu. He said, just before punching a hole through Yukitake's back. And then there were three. With the Kenpachis. When Yamamoto made the announcement for Zaraki to cut loose, he and Unohana went out for a stroll. She undid her braid and was in her Yachiru state while Zaraki had his eye patch off, both had their blades ready to carve into their opponents. Their hunt was fruitful as they came across their Reigai, both as ready as the originals. The four Kenpachis stood there, analyzing their respective opponents, and their worth as enemies. Well, this is new. Zaraki quietly said, earning a raised eyebrow from Unohana. I'm not sure what to do. Do I take them both myself, do I let you have one, do I kill my Reigai and leave the other for us to have some special fun? He voiced, earning an understanding nod from his wife. I've had much the same thoughts, she said, raising her blade. How about we see if they can even survive being our playmates? She asked with a dark grin, earning a savage one from her husband just before the two sides charged at each other. The Zarakis released a thunderous clang as their blades collided while the Yakuras moving swiftly in a lethal dance. Zaraki's usual reckless abandon sharply contrasted with Unohana's fast movements, releasing an awkward symphony of fast-paced clings and heavy clangs from the two fights. Heido number 88, Hiryu Gekizoku Shurten Reiho. The Reigai Unohana shot at the real one, who dodged and flashed directly into her Reigai's guard. She took out a pair of daggers while getting into a sword lock, ready to plunge the blades into her Reigai's throat. The two had to jump away from each other when the Reigai Zaraki released his Shurkai and brought it down between the two before trying to split Zaraki in half. The cleaver came down with ground-shattering force, but Zaraki caught the blade before it made contact with him. Is this, the Reigai tried to pull the blade away but it wouldn't budge, how strong Kagur Roza thinks I am. Zaraki pulled on the blade before gripping the axe haft, lifting the Reigai before throwing him to a wall. I know I've held back, but I don't recall being so weak. Zaraki roared before throwing the copy of Nozarashi back to the Reigai. The clone punched the axe blade off its lethal course and caught it safely, ready to fight again. Bakudo number 62, Hyaparankan. Unohana's Reigai called out before throwing a barrage of light poles down at Zaraki, with the real one appearing behind her husband to deflect every single pole of the spell. Heido number 90, Kurohitsuji. Yachiru quickly cast, trapping her Reigai in the black box. Suddenly, a furry beast attacked her while a large skeleton picked up the black coffin and broke it apart. Zaraki appeared above the skeleton with Nozarashi out and slammed the blade down on the creature's skull, shattering the entire construct. Yachiru herself quickly cut through the furry creature's body and made it dissipate as well, leaving the two Kenpachis with their Reigai doubles once again. The Reigai of Unohana readied herself to cast another spell and Yachiru flashed toward her with her blade raised. Her Reigai dodged but Zaraki's, her actual target, was cut across his gut, nearly in half. No. The Reigai Unohana cried out, having as much care for her lover as the original does for hers. That second of distraction was her doom as Zaraki brought his axe down on her. The two Reigai crumbled into dust as the two Kenpachis sealed and sheathed their blades. Never mind what I was thinking. Zaraki scoffed, looking at the mod souls as they crumbled to dust. They were too fragile. Let's find the rest. I'm still unsatisfied. Yachiru said as they continued their hunt. With Yamamoto. With the threat of Yukitake out of the way, Yamamoto unleashed even greater flames and was more aggressive. The fire was so hot that the buildings were burning to ash and the clouds dissipated from the scorching heat. Unohana was integral to them to last longer because of the healing skill and Yukitake could reflect his fire back at him, thus they had to be crushed as soon as possible. With those two gone, then Genryusai could stop being as cautious as he was. Kairaku's game still kept him on his toes, but the Reigai couldn't get too close without getting burned, and Isshin's own fire Zanpakuto was the only thing that kept him from getting vaporized. It seems Kagur Roza is trying to retreat. The dragon noted as he saw Kagur Roza opening a portal with his Raikou. A quick flare of his Ryujin Jaka forced the man away from his portal. In an effort to confine the man, the fires soon constricted into a shrinking dome. Jikaku Enjo. You will not escape from here so easily, Kagur Roza. He growled, glaring at the man that's caused such a disturbance in Soul Society. That was when he sensed someone coming up from behind him, despite Kairaku and Isshin being in front of him. Trusting his senses, he spun at the last second and dodged a stab from the Reigai of Shunsui. Kajio Kuri and Darumasan Ga Kuranda. An afterimage to distract me in trying to hit my blind spot. Kaiten Kayakatsu's supposed to be more moody, more hints of Kagur Roza's meddling. He grabbed onto the Reigai and swung his blade, cutting his opponent in half from just under the shoulders. Now, time to end this. The dragon said, facing his final Reigai foe. West Rukon District, Plains area. Rukia was visiting her family in the Shiba clan when Yamamoto made the call about the Reigai. Since then, she's been keeping to an out-of-the-way area so as not to disturb the civilians of the Rukon district. She's had her Shireiki at the ready and just waited, for an opponent, her allies, pretty much anything or anyone. Suddenly she felt someone coming up from behind, turning to find Ranjiku appearing at the edge of the field. Rukia. The 10th lieutenant called out, flashing closer to the icy Vizard. Good to see that you're okay. The moment she was within blade's reach, Rukia held her sword to the girl's throat. The shocked lieutenant held her hands up and backed away a couple inches. Prove you're the real Ranjiku. Rukia demanded, glaring at the girl she suspected was a doppelganger. Considering that these people were meant to replace them, it stood to reason that they were copies of themselves. With that in mind, she needed proof before trusting anyone anymore. The maybe Ranjiku thought for a moment before getting an idea. Remember that night when Captains Zaraki and Unohana got married? How we had some fun with our dear Ichigo? She asked rather suggestively, all of which was pretty accurate to Ranjiku. Rukia was about to drop her guard when she heard Sodi no Shireiki's voice call out to her. She's not real, Hiniko's spirit is not with her. Rukia didn't stop her blade's descent, but she did draw a circle with a flick of her wrist at the base of the now confirmed Reigai's feet. Tsukishiro. She said, using her power to create a massive pillar of ice where the Reigai stood. The Reigai knew her cover was blow when Rukia's hand made that twirl and managed to avoid the attack, just before the ice formed. As she did, Rukia appeared behind her with her mask on. Hakuren. She shouted, unleashing her freezing torrent at the Reigai and forcing her to dodge again. Growl, Hiniko. The fake Ranjiku called out as her blade turned to dust, swinging at Rukia and forcing the Vizard to move. Bakudo number 63, Seijo. Sabaku. The Reigai yelled, clenching her fist and wrapping Rukia up in glowing yellow chains. She was about to make another swing when another chain wrapped around her and a blade was held to her neck. I'd appreciate it if you didn't hurt my sister wife. Another Ranjiku said, ready to cleave the head off of her opponent when she felt a sudden chill around her. A pillar of ice appeared almost instantly after Rukia tackled her out of the way, with another Rukia coming in from the edge of the field. Thanks for the save, Rukia. She said as they got up and faced their opponents. Before either could do anything, they were enveloped in a gray cloud of moving steel dust. Nico Rinbu, my Reigai surrounded us in a swirling ball of death. Ranjiku warned her companion, who seemed to be focusing elsewhere. Suddenly, her masked face turned to where Ranjiku's Reigai was and started her second dance. Tsugi no Mai, she said as a whitish-blue ball of Reisher formed at the tip of her sword, Siro Hakuren. She shouted before moving forward, dissipating the cloud of ash and colliding with another wave of ice before easily dominating it. The other Rukia was struggling to maintain her attack, with the Reigai of Ranjiku shocked but recovering to attack. The real Ranjiku didn't allow that as she manifested Hiniko behind the Reigai. The Zanpakuto spirit quickly disabled the clone of her master and restrained her as Rukia's Zero-infused Hakuren consumed her Reigai in ice. The pair took a breath of relief with Rukia marching over to finish the fake Ranjiku, only for the real Ranjiku to stop her. "That's enough, Rukia," she said, looking at her copy. "There are plans for any Reigai we can recover." Rukia looked at her companion, who was uncharacteristically serious. "You're planning a three-way with Ichigo consisting of you and your copy, aren't you?" she asked, earning a blush and giggle from Ranjiku. "Four-way actually. I had another me in the world of the living," she admitted, making Rukia sigh. "Pervert," she said. "DMN. Why didn't I think of that?" she thought. With Yamamoto. It was no longer a battle, it was evident that the old dragon had won the battle. While Isshin's and Jetsu flames gave him some protection, Yamamoto's fire was even stronger. Isshin was indeed a strong man, but Yamamoto was stronger. Everything that Isshin had to challenge the ancient dragon was proven futile in the face of the man that led the Shinigami. Getsuga Tensho. He roared, unleashing the wave of Raisure at Yamamoto, and the dragon merely cut it in half. He tried flashing away, only for Yama to appear in front of him and punch him back into the ground. The Reigai was groaning in pain as he forced himself back up. If he had anything that made him like Isshin, it was the stubbornness of the Shiba man. Unfortunately for him, with no need to hold back or be as careful, Yamamoto was just moments away from ending the fight. "This ends now," the dragon said in that gravely voice as he passed by the man, sheathing his blade. Before the Reigai could protest, all features faded and it fell in two before crumbling to dust. In front of Yamamoto was a long gash in the ground that slowly formed. Perhaps using that Natajiri was going too far. He thought before turning his attention to Kagur Roza, who had already managed to escape. That fool thinks he can escape. He gripped his Zanpakuto tightly before sensing an appearance of two Arrancar, turning to find a dark-skinned woman standing with a man with a Van Dyke beard. "Is Ichigo with you?" the female Arrancar asked, Yamamoto just now recognizing her as Halibel. "He is," he admitted, not revealing where. "And he is safe, despite Kagur Roza's efforts." "That man dared to attack me, Ray. How dare he?" the man said with shock before turning to rage. "I, Dordoni Alessandro del Sacaccio, will deliver judgment on him," he said before running off, already on the scent of Kagur Roza. "I swear, that fool practically worships Ichigo," the shark said before bowing to Yamamoto. "Please keep our king safe. This is our burden now," she said before disappearing herself. Vizard fight. Rose was visiting Love, catching up on their manga, when the call came out. The captains pulled out their masks in preparation, with Reigai of almost each member of their old Vizard group appearing. It was the two of them against a copy of themselves, Shinji, Kensei, Mashiro, Hiyori, and Lisa, outnumbering them 7-2. The exception was Hachigen, and the absence of the Kido master was not a good sign. Was he hiding somewhere, or doing a separate mission? There seemed to be no good possibility. "UJRKS, I was just getting to the good part," Love said, cracking his neck in preparation for the fight. The main character was finally about to find out which one was his promised girl. "You're reading Nisekoi, Love," Rose pointed out, unleashing his whip. There was going to be a cliffhanger instead. Just like always. The Reigai summoned their Shirkai, except for Shinji who already had his out, and the two sides charged at each other. Before the two Vizards could prepare their attacks, the world turned upside down and their enemies were getting further away. Or that's what it seemed as they were soon cut, bashed, and blasted by their opponents, slamming against the ground. Shinji's inverted world technique. Love growled, the pair getting up as their regeneration healed them. That BSTRD did his homework, didn't he? He was about to say something else, but they had to raise their weapons to block an oncoming attack from the Reigai Hiyori and Mashiro. Surprisingly, they succeeded in blocking the attacks, shocking both sides. Too bad they aren't as strong as us. They heard coming from above them as Shinji, Kensei, and Mashiro appeared, all wearing masks. I cancelled out their inversion with my own, Shinji explained while Kensei circled around the Reigai and swung his blade about wildly. Let's finish this quickly. The rest nodded as a dome of razor air blade trapped the Reigai. The Vizards all raised their hands and charged their Zero blasts. Mashiro's was a kick, and Kensei got out of the way as the combined blast gouged the land and vaporized the Reigai. I better make sure that didn't kill any civilians. Love said after seeing the carnage and leaving to do just that. The rest just stood about awkwardly. This seemed a little disappointing, hasn't it? Shinji earning a shrug from Rose. I guess it stands to reason that Reigai can't use hollow erasure. He said, remembering just how new hollowification studies are. Inside the Kido core. Maximum security storage. Two figures made their way through the forbidden section of the most dangerous area in Soul Society's relic storage. In here one would be able to find a wall lined with stone tablets, blocked by glowing Kido spell seals, each one holding a map to the location of an artifact deemed too dangerous to be left alone. However, one artifact was still in this room. The one these two came for, quite possibly the most dangerous one in the wrong hands. The Hogyoku, the target of the two as they stepped into the amber glow of the many Kido seals. There it is. The smaller figure said, revealing himself to be Tessai Tsukabashi. With that, Master Kagur Roza's plans will no longer be restrained by the need for that stubborn girl. The Reigai said as he and his partner, the Reigai of Hachijin Ashoda, got closer to the seal before stopping a few feet from it. Commander Tessai. Hachi started as Tessai knelt down and waved his hand, revealing a complex seal on the ground. That's a powerful one. Many forbidden spells layered together. We were expecting this when we came down here. They wouldn't let something like that be unguarded. He said as the two got to undoing the seals. They got through one before their heads were trapped in transparent blue boxes that turned red and separated their heads from their necks, causing their bodies to crumble to dust. An orange door appeared as the real Hachi came out to recover the mod souls. Another two Hachi? Tessai asked, coming down with another pair of Reigai of the Kido Masters. Smart of that guy to send two teams. How bad is the seal damaged? Just the first one, immobilization. The large man said as he got about to repairing the seal. Maybe we should leave a warning that this is for their safety. He said, turning to where the Hogyoku was locked away. The last person that got too close was devoured by that thing. With Kagur Roza. DMN, DMN, DMN. The clone thought as he sped as fast as he could away from the monster that was Yamamoto. How could I have miscalculated so badly? He thought that the Godii relied on Ichigo too much and they grew weaker as a result. He thought that he correctly gauged the powers and abilities of the other Soul Reapers. He forgot that even though Ichigo did take much of the burden for almost every major conflict occurrence, the rest of the court guard squads made sure to train themselves as much as they could. He thought that they'd still fight with honor and pride. Soul Society was now in the mentality of win. Not graciously win, just win. They were out and ready to fight and kill any that disturbed what Yamamoto built with the original Godii. Going somewhere? Anciano. He heard before a white-clad leg slammed into his face. The moment he regained his footing, he found a short, hollowed blade at his neck. That is so rude, and we came all this way just to find you. Dordoni said, waving his hands about while shaking his head. Aaron Carr. We really have sunk so low as to recruit creatures like you. I figured they were joking. Kagur Roza said, slightly turning before the blade pressed against his neck. Mod souls were deemed too inhumane or too dangerous, but mutating the soul with hollow erasure or gifting hollows with the powers of the Soul Reaper while my research was to be destroyed. He growled, glaring at the pair before quickly spinning his Raikou. Where's the justice or sense in that? He roared before escaping Halibel's captivity and gaining some distance from the two. Why did he have to suffer? He cried out, getting behind Dordoni and aimed to cut him from behind. Ola Azul. Halibel calmly called out as she fired an energy blade at Kagur Roza. The Reigai master managed to raise his blade to block, but that gave Dordoni plenty of time to counterattack. The man slid closer to his enemy and kicked him as hard as he could into the center of the man's torso, causing Kagur Roza to lose all the air in his lungs. As he stumbled to regain his footing, he felt a blade stab into the base of his spine and sever it. His legs buckled from underneath him, now useless and paralyzed from the damage. We can stomach hate aimed at us, Halibel said, walking over to his sword hand before stomping on his wrist. We already were considered expendable by our previous master. Dordoni continued as he took Kagur Roza's Raikou away. But our king offers us hope, a future, and his love for his people. Raikou reverted to its cane form, which Dordoni stabbed into Kagur Roza's other hand. We Arrancar love our lord, love Ichigo, for giving us that. You insulted our king, Halibel resumed, wanted to threaten him at his most vulnerable. She and Dordoni gripped his arms and shattered his shoulders, ignoring his screams of pain as they did so. To us, that is punishable by death. But, lucky you, Kisuke Urahara convinced us to take you in alive. He and Mayuri have ideas. The mastermind behind the Reigai could only whimper and tremble in fear and outrage as the Arrancar dragged him back to face judgment. Cloned aftermath. Mayuri's playground. A week had passed since the Reigai uprising and the damage from the fighting was undone. Peace and order had returned to the Siriidii and Rukon districts as everyone got back to what was really important, preparing for the blood war. All capable fighters were working themselves to the bone to improve their skills. Renji was sparring with Byakuya to master his true Bankai, Ikkaku and Yumachika sparred against Zaraki, Rukia and Ranjaku starting working to attain their Bankai. All around the Godii had people either honing their skills or working to attain their final release. Despite the grim preparations, everyone was able to wear a smile on their faces for now. No one could hear the screams of agony as Mayuri drove needles into Kagur Roza's skull. HNNNAS. The man screamed as his torment continued, the needle piercing through his skull like it wasn't there and into his brain, unable to move from Ashisoji Jizo's paralysis after they disabled Inaba's immunity to Mayuri's Zanpakuto and all the restraints to keep him in place. He figured he'd be imprisoned, executed, something other than this horrific torture at Mayuri's hands. Stop being such a baby. Mayuri scolded as he finished inserting the 10th needle, all of which were attached to a computer that he went back to. You'd think with all the tinkering you've done, you would have at least done some of your own neurosurgery on yourself. He clicked away at his computer, analyzing page after page of data as it came pouring in. What little the man could move was tensed up as electricity surged through him. We would have gotten to this sooner, but the captains took forever to come to a decision. What are you talking about? Inaba asked, struggling through the pain while Mayuri continued to toy with him. It would just be a simple matter of sentencing him to death for treason, no need to extend it. But then he remembered the core factor, the reason the Godii has gotten more lenient on whatever may be useful. So, it finally clicked, did it? Mayuri asked, knowing the answer. Yes, be glad. Your original self's aim to complete his research will be completed, Project Spearhead will be revived. He stepped away from the monitors to grab another of his needles. Unfortunately, you will have to be put down. Wait. I can help. I will help. This is NNNYA. He pleaded as Mayuri drove another one into his brain. I can be of use. He panted out as Mayuri returned to the computer. That's not necessary. Especially since your other half is far more trustworthy. The SDST smiled as the data flowed into his machine, finishing the retrieval of the Precipice World data. Now he could start with the Mod Soul and Reigai data. During the last week, we've investigated Oko Yashima and yourself. He saved his research in the Danai and separated his mind into two, creating you and Nozomi Kujo. So, it's been decided that I'd isolate all the data you've collected, all the knowledge and salvage anything useful from you, and then we transfer all of that into Nozomi Kujo if she chooses to be cooperative. If not, well, we still have the data necessary. It'd just be more of a hassle. He grabbed a few more needles. But till then, I'm allowed to do whatever I deem necessary to secure the data from you. And I deem you suffer. He smiled sadistically before slowly plugging a few more into his head, never once letting Kagur Roza's screams distract him as he drained his mind while carrying out the man's punishment. Hueco Mundo, Kingdom of Lost Noches. Jin and Urahara silently watched Senna and Nozomi trade blows with each other. After the Trace Bestias spirited the mod's soul to Lost Noches and reported the situation to Jin, the man had an insatiable curiosity about the girl. So he attacked her, provoked her, toyed with her mind until she managed to summon her own Zanpakuto and fight back. Since then, he's had her train with the Arankar in order to bring out more of her latent abilities. You're half of a Shinigami. The fox remembered telling her as Senna shot a bolt of electricity at the verdette. Your other half had a Shirkai, you most likely do as well. Show us the power you possess. Prove your worth. Nozomi held out her blade, a broadsword with a stubbed cross tip, and absorbed the rapier in the attack before reflecting it back. He was a firm believer in emotional stress bringing out the true power in someone, and the results showed. It wasn't until Senna came by that she started talking to others again. Something about an existence not meant to be that brought the two together. She's making good progress. Urahara said, checking his phone as it buzzed. And construction on the new underground transport system and rapier beacon seem to be going well. Those exequias are really useful for manual labor. Rudborn hasn't had much to do. Same with Rununganga. Jin responded before jumping down. Okay, that's enough you two. He called out, causing Senna and Nozomi to stop. That's enough. You're making good progress. He complimented as the two walked by, Nozomi making a point to stomp on his foot as she did. I deserve that, I guess. Well Nozomi, I just got word back from Mayuri. The scientist said as he got in front of the mod soul. Should you accept it, you will take over Kagur Roza's old position in Squad 12 and continue Oko Yashima's work with Project Spearhead. I understand that you may have some reservations about this, so the choice is yours. Nozomi's expression did not change, but those eyes told him that her mind was working overtime. Complete my research. The words of her original self echoed in her heart and mind. All she wanted was to stop Kagur Roza, to end his dark ambitions of revenge and conquest, but without him she had no more reason to run. Her only goal that she could claim was actually hers was gone. Now, here it was, the chance to follow Yashima's goal. But it was presented to her as her own choice. Does she take it, would doing so make it her own goal and not Yashima's? She looked over to Senna, who merely smiled at her with that carefree grin. Flashback. I do know what that's like. She said after Nozomi told her about how she came into being. I was originally the comprised memories of thousands of souls that got lost on their journey to the Soul Society. Sometimes, I would go from childhood to marriage to dying in my teens. From having a loving family to an abusive household. I couldn't tell who I was, aside from only two things. My choice to die and save the world from a dimensional collapse, and falling in love with my lieutenant at the time. So, what would you say? How do I know I'm making my own choices? She asked, getting a joy-filled smile in response. I just stopped thinking about that and did whatever. It's my life now, so why waste it worrying about such things? Flashback end. I guess I only have one option. Nozomi muttered before facing Urahara with a look of confidence. I may be the lighter half of Oko Yashima, but I am my own person. I won't take on his research and continue his legacy. I will go beyond that. she declared, placing her hand to her chest. I am Nozomi Kujo. I am my own person. Ichigo's inner world. The hybrid was training, non-stop, for an entire week. An entire week of endless nightmares and horrors in Ichigo's mind as Kyoka Suigetsu attacked him. The mirror pool had no ripples and Ichigo was blocking every actual strike from the illusory blade amid the swirling vortex of blades that came at him. Unwavering focus as he kept the sole image of Kyoka Suigetsu in his sight while the visions beneath were crushed by his own clear visualizations. What started as barely maintainable surprises now turned to full-fledged hypnotic illusions, as was the result of this training. A full week of nothing but this training as it got more and more difficult until now. That should be enough. Zangetsu thought, having long since finished healing Ichigo from Hell's toxic power while letting his master train in his new abilities. Ichigo. Kyoka. He called out, getting the two to stop their sparring. Good news, the damage is now undone. You can wake up whenever. The hybrid spirit informed his wielder. Ichigo himself looked to Kyoka, who gave a smile and a nod to let him know that it was okay. Thanks for taking care of that Zangetsu. I should return before they face another crisis. Ichigo said jokingly, thinking back to how almost every other week was a new problem that needed fixing. I better not have missed a DMN thing. He suddenly growled, coming up with worst-case scenarios in his mind before disappearing. Think he'll calm down after seeing that Soul Society isn't in flames without him to protect it? The female version of Aizen said, looking over to her fellow Zanpakuto spirit. Meh, he'll get over it. Yamamoto's office. In the week since the Reigai incident, neither Arrancar left him alone. One was always near him, standing vigilant for the sole purpose of protecting the one Yamamoto had in his care. Their still slumbering king. The longest either of them had been away was the woman Halibel, speaking with Mayuri about something and was gone for half a day. Now both stood behind him, eyes glued to the doors, windows, and Ichigo's stasis pod. Suddenly, that same pod began beeping wildly away, with Rukia barging in shortly after. Give me Ichigo now. She shouted, sniffing up a small handful of dust. Remembering how her powers work, Yamamoto threw Ichigo's pod to her. She managed to catch it and opened it up, just an instant before sneezing. With that done, Ichigo was freed from the pod and grew to his full size. Covering in spit and snot. Thank you Rukia. Ichigo said, staying calm but clearly annoyed as he wiped his face. I'll be sure to repay the favor. Rukia blushed before running off. I wonder what kind of plushie I should get. He thought, knowing the kind of thoughts he put into the Foolbringer's head. He then noticed the two Arrancar kneeling before him. Dordoni, Halibel. Did I miss something? Just a minor inconvenience Ichigo, nothing more. The old dragon said, choosing to keep the Reigai matter as just that. A minor inconvenience. When they heard that you were in a coma, they elected to come here and watch over you. I gave them permission to do so. Why should I deny them their service to their king? Ichigo turned to the Arrancar, keeping their heads bowed as they waited their lord's word. Thank you. Both of you. He said, reaching down to raise their heads and see his smiling face. I am grateful for your concern and I shall be sure to reward you when next I'm in Hueco Mundo. They all rose to their feet as Ichigo opened a garganta. Now, return to Las Noches and think about what you would like as a reward. So long as it's within my power, I shall grant it. The two bowed their heads as they departed. Okay master, what really Ichigo was about to say when instantly, Yamamoto's blade was inches from decapitating the hybrid. A large shockwave of force created a cloud of dust, debris, and paper, all of which was slowly settling. When it finally did, Yamamoto's blade was resting against Ichigo's sealed Zangetsu, and the boy's expression did not change in the slightest. The blade stopped, millimeters from clashing at full force. What really happened? Never dropped your guard for even a moment. Yamamoto thought approvingly as he sheathed his blade. What else is there to teach you, my pupil? Like I said, a minor inconvenience. Just some fool that thought that the goatee had grown weak, lazy, and vulnerable without you around. It was taken care of, don't worry about it. He went back to his desk, Ichigo cleaning his office as he did so. Why not head back home and spend some time with your family before going to Las Noches for the night? He said, giving Ichigo his leave to enjoy himself. Thank you, sensei. I think I will. Ichigo returned with a smile before flashing away. With nothing to do, Yamamoto went back to his paperwork. That boy seems to have mastered all you have to teach him, hasn't he? A familiar voice spoke out, making Yamamoto look up to see Ichigo Hyasub grinning down at him. Though, what he needs to learn next is not something you or I can teach. What do you have in mind, old friend? Genryusai asked the still grinning man. World of the living. For the first time in a long while, Ichigo had the chance to relax. First off, he went home to see his family, have a nice meal, and bid his goodbye to an old friend. He never got around to it, never had the time to do it. He had to save his sisters, defeat Aizen, stabilize his new rule in Hueco Mundo, go to hell, and recover from that trip. He can't even remember when he heard about Khan's death. After dinner he stayed in front of that small shrine, reflecting on his memories with Khan, thanking him for always looking after his sisters, and wishing that he could have had one more adventure. Maybe sneak him into the girls' locker room just once for his sake. But the perverted mod soul is gone now, and Ichigo knew he'd never want another one. He also knew that he'd need a new one anyway. He was emotionally pained, not stupid. Goodbye, Khan. Wherever you are, I'm sure you're nestled in between a beautiful pair of BRSTs. Ichigo said, finishing his farewell. It's what you would have wanted. He got up, finding that Yuzu and Karen had stayed with him, watching over their brother to make sure he took the loss well enough. He sighed, smiling at the now sleeping duo as he picked them both up to carry to their bedroom. Once he laid them to rest, he saw flashes out of the window. Looking closer, he found that they were mainly centered around the front feld that Ichigo and Yoruichi showed the spiriters. What the hell? He asked seconds before his phone began to buzz, with Yoruichi calling him. He quickly left the room and answered. Ichigo, do you see those flashes at the front feld? The Quincy asked, getting an affirmative from his cousin. That's Morse code. Ichigo checked again and noticed that it was indeed quick flashes and long lights. The Sternritters are being watched. Yawacha's got them under harsher scrutiny. Did you master that hypnosis skill yet? Yeah. Should we go? Ichigo asked, going Soul Reaper and grabbing Kyoka Suigetsu. Keep your Ryatsu suppressed and move fast. I'll meet you there. Yoruichi said before hanging up. It took the pair barely a minute before reaching the area and scouted the area. It took some searching, but they found someone new among the group of Quincy, a man with chin-length black hair that was combed back with a strand hanging in front of his face. He wore baggy pants with a white t-shirt and brown jacket, sitting in the tree branches like he was about to take a nap as the spiriters sparred against each other. Ichigo kept an eye on him while Yoruichi searched a little longer to confirm that there was no one else. Focus. Time it just right. Ichigo thought as he unsheathed Kyoka Suigetsu, watching the man and waiting for his chance. The moment the man's eyes shut, time slowed to a crawl for the hybrid. He launched himself to pass in front of the man, keeping the blade as visible as possible as he did so. The moment he was in front of him, the man's eyes opened. Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. Ichigo whispered quickly before vanishing from sight. The process measured in a millisecond, now to test the trap. The unknown man looked around, eyes passing by Ichigo and Yoruichi a couple of times, as he searched. Everything okay, Isshin? Basby asked the man, stopping the training the Quincy were doing. Soon, the now named Isshin swatted the air in front of him. Yeah. Just a mosquito. Continue. He said, leaning back and watching the group. Ichigo and Yuryu locked eyes and nodded. A skin was under Ichigo's hypnosis. Yuryu went to meet with the Quincy while Ichigo kept an eye on a skin, manipulating what he watched using what the man says. Soon, Yuryu signaled Ichigo that it was time to leave. Letting the illusion play in a way that wouldn't arouse suspicions, Ichigo left as the Quincy said they were done training. The cousins met up on the roof of Ichigo's home. BSTRD. Yuryu cursed as they landed, Isshin coming up to find out what happened. So, Yawatch wasted 200 Quincy lives in an effort to kill you after you defeated Aizen. Recognizing the losses, he's now sending out some of his forces to gather new soldiers. The lost, weary, and broken from all around the world that he'd infuse with his soul and empower. Bambietta predicts that they'd at least double in numbers as a result. Even if some couldn't be credible threats, they'd empower Yawatch when he recalls his soul from them. Well, it was only a matter of time before something like this happened. Isshin said, already planning his report. Aizen also planned on strengthening his army. I'm more surprised that it took Yawatch this long to announce it. We can increase our patrols around Japan, but I'm not sure about the rest of the world if he expands his reach. We'll have to think of something while we still have the time. Yuryu said as he continued with his report. As for that new guy, his name is Askin Nak Lovar. Sternritter D and one of Yawatch Schutzstaffel, meaning one of his best is watching Basby and the others. Before they were walking on eggshells, now they're barefoot on broken glass. He said, emphasizing their precarious situation. They're stopping contact with us until they can be sure they'd be safe, from Yawatch and his assassins. This was only going to last for so long, we can't be upset about this. Ichigo said, trying to keep them from getting frustrated over losing their main intel suppliers. Instead, we need to focus on how to continue strengthening our own defenses for when the time comes. The two nodded in agreement, though decided to hold off on continuing this discussion for later. Give them some time to think things through and plan appropriately. As they left to get to bed, Ichigo stayed on the rooftop and gazed at the sky. This isn't going to be easy. But you are not going to win. He thought in defiance, steeling his resolve for the coming war. He was brought out of his thoughts when his phone buzzed again, this time from Yamamoto. Yes, sensei. Ichigo asked, only to get someone other than the captain commander. Ichigo, I have a proposition for you, lad. Ichibe Hyasube said to him. Las noches, meeting room. Ichigo strode out through the halls of his palace, the latest conversation with the old monk and his master still playing in his mind. If he was going to do what they suggested, he needed to make sure things in Hueco Mundo would stay stabilized. He wasn't expecting peace, he was sure any Minos Grande cocky enough would attack with that beacon calling them, but he wanted to make sure his side would stay in control and remain loyal. The doors opened to reveal the new meeting room, a single throne in front of a curved table where his strongest Arrancar assembled. Jin stood at the foot of the throne, waiting for the king of the realm. Ichigo immediately flashed to his seat, facing the hollows. Sit. He ordered, prompting them all to do so in their chairs around the table. The round table. In Arthurian lore it was meant to be a symbol, a way of saying that the king and his knights were equal and none stood higher than the others. A nice gesture, but that didn't change a simple fact. That the king was still the king. You are all equal before me and I will hold no single one as greater than the others, regardless of power. He said, pointing to the table they sat at. I took this throne by being the strongest, gave you place in this kingdom in exchange for your lives, demanded your loyalty for the promise of a new world for you. Looking back on it, I see more like a tyrant than a benevolent ruler, don't I? Still better than Aizen if you ask me. Grimjow said aloud. He did all the same things. Difference is, it was all for him. Not for anyone else. Thank you, Grimjow. Ichigo returned, straightening up as he continued. I'd rather not be a tyrant though, but I know the law of the land here in Hueco Mundo. The strongest is the one that rules. The hybrid removed some of his seals and unleashed a crushing spiritual pressure for just a second before resealing himself. Was that enough of a reminder? Why would that be necessary? Surachi asked, gasping for breath from the sudden assault. The rest of the Arrancar looked up to him expectantly, hoping for a reasonable answer from their ruler. I did that to avoid needing to kill anyone, he answered. Soon I will have to disembark on a journey. One that will last a good while. I do not want to return to find a civil war has ravaged my kingdom, and I lose any of you in the chaos. If I need to fight for my throne again, I would have to be far less merciful than I'd like to be. Where are you going and will you be fine? Ulquiorra asked, concerned for the one he swore his loyalty to. I will be fine, Ulquiorra. But I will be troubled if I need to worry about all of you while I am gone. So, here is my royal decree. While I am gone, Jin is in charge and you are to focus on getting stronger by either training yourselves or by gathering more to our ranks. Am I understood? He asked, watching each Arrancar nod their heads as his gaze washed over them. Thank you. That eases my mind. Now I believe there is a matter of rewarding those that came to my aid. Dordoni, Halabel, come forth. He ordered, prompting the two to get up and kneel before his throne. Have you thought about your rewards? Mireille, I ask that I have greater strength to serve you. Dordoni said, standing before his lord. Very well. Jin. Ichigo called out as the silver-haired fox pulled out the jar of yami pills and giving one to Dordoni. He swallowed the concentrated power of the former Ciro Espada and a pulse was sent out to show an increase in his power. Now, train yourself to attain your own segunda etapa. The hybrid ordered, glancing to Ulquiorra and giving the silent order to assist the man. Yes, Mireille. Dordoni said with a bow before returning to his seat. Halabel rose and looked to the hybrid. If I may be so bold, my request should be kept in private. She said, Ichigo thinking he saw a faint blush on what he could see of her face not hidden by that collar. Please come to my palace later. Very well. You have your orders. Dismissed. Separation for training. With Ichigo. What's next on the agenda? Ichigo asked himself as he finished dressing and exited Halabel's palace, the shark following behind him. Should I check up on Stark? Spar with Grimjow? He came to a stop as Halabel's 3 fraction appeared before him. Is something the matter, girls? Jin says he needs you in the throne room. Mila Rose answered, stepping forward. All knights are appearing in attendance as well. Ichigo looked back to Halabel, thinking to what Ichibe told him about his future training. Fine. Is everyone there? He asked, getting a nod from the Amazoness. Excellent. Let's go. He said before flashing to the meeting room, Halabel and the Trace Bestias following behind. True to Mila's report, the room housed the many Arrancar of Las Noches. The moment he spotted Jin, he made his way toward the captain. What's the news? The head captain said to tell you that everything is ready, and to have a maximum of 2 days for yourself before you go. The silver-haired fox said. I have a feeling this should be an interesting journey for you. They wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't going to be productive. Ichigo returned, opening a garganta to the Soul Society. Halabel? Neliel? Want to come along? He asked the current 2 strongest female Arrancar. Yay! Field trip. Neliel cheered excitedly as she leaped into the portal, Halabel being silent as she followed. Ichigo turned back to the Arrancar, looking to their king expectantly. When I return, I plan to be a stronger and better person. Ichigo answered them. And I want you all to be the same. Stronger and better. All of Las Noches. I expect great things when I return. And with that, he joined Nell and Tia and shot towards Soul Society. The journey went by in a flash and soon they exited the emptiness of the void and into the realm of Soul Reapers. They landed in the courtyard of the Squad 1 meeting hall, where Ichigo was promptly punched in the face. What the hell is this, leaving to train, nonsense. Tatsuki demanded, rubbing her sore knuckles while Yuryu, Chad, and Orihime watched from a distance and tried to calm down the errand car. I thought the point of you being transferred to Yamamoto's squad was so he could oversee your training. Now you have to disappear for who knows how long for a different training. It's not like we're innocent, Tatsuki. Yuryu chimed in, being a voice of reason among the group. We're being assigned to travel the world and experience it for ourselves. Same thing. Yeah, but at least we can keep in touch. He's going completely off the grid. Tatsuki returned and likely would have continued before Chojiro interrupted. If you're done, the head captain is waiting. He said with a firm tone as the kids got up and proceeded up the stairs. With Ichigo's permission, Nell and Halibel were allowed to explore the Siriidii while he went to the meeting. Inside the meeting hall was Yamamoto and Ichibe Hyasube. There is no denying that you've accomplished many feats that most would deem suicidal or impossible. Genryusai started. Invading Soul Society, defying ancient laws and traditions that have held for 2,000 years, storming the realm of hollows, stopping the destruction of the world and balance of souls time and time again, all you've done with your friends and allies at your back. That must change. This surprised the human teens. While admirable to have such faith and trust in your allies, you have the idea of dropping whatever you're doing to help them should they be in trouble. Ichibe continued. But what if you are in a situation where you can't afford distractions? Where you can't look back and help? Where you absolutely cannot interfere? The group looked to each other, knowing that they'd likely defy all that and charge in to save the lives of their allies. Shinigami are not meant to be heroes or judges, Yamamoto resumed, we are balancers. Meant to keep the flow of souls and reincarnation intact, lest reality collapses into ruin. While preferable to avoid it, if it means destroying a great evil or threat to that balance, then you must be ready to sacrifice lives. Your allies or your own. Yamamoto looked to Ichigo. My boy, you are ready to throw yourself into the eye of the storm because you know you are powerful. So strong that you believe that only you should be the sacrifice because you can prevent it. You must be put into a spot where you cannot involve yourself in the affairs of the living, only the matters of the dead. Ichigo wanted to protest that there was nothing wrong with what he's done, but recognized that he always threw himself into the fire. The only reason he wasn't involved with the Regai was because he was out of commission. The rest of you need to learn to struggle without the idea of your friends coming to your rescue and vice versa. Ichibe added, looking to the rest. All of you are to travel the world, see new things, feel new experiences, and grow as people. The rest of the teens nodded, Ichigo noticing that they didn't get nearly as much detail as to what their training is to be. You can begin in another 2 days. Till then, enjoy yourselves. The monk said with a smile. I recommend that. You visit your friends and teachers, Ichigo. Yamamoto advised before dismissing the group. Squad 12, Mod Soul Research Department. Download nearing completion. Nimue said as she and Urahara kept an eye on the computer monitors while Nozomi slept inside a erasure tube with a helmet attached to her head, giving her all the knowledge and research data she would need in her new station. Down the hall were the muffled screams of agony as Mayuri drained Kagur Roza's brain and Zanpakuto's spirit into the system that downloaded everything. Soon his cries ended and seconds after that Nimue announced the completion of the project. Let her out. Urahara ordered, leading Nimue to drain the tube and open it for Nozomi to fall out of. Kisuke caught her and carried her to Nimue. Get her dressed and moved to a bed. Run diagnostics and tell us when she wakes up. Nimue nodded and took the sleeping Nozomi away. Once she was out, Mayuri came in with Ichigo following behind. Ichigo, I'm so glad you're here. Indeed, he's so lucky to have such a rare opportunity. Mayuri hissed out, jealous of what Ichigo is getting to do. A whole new world of research opportunities and they're sending a superpowered child with no dash, he continued to rant, which Urahara and Ichigo ignored. Right, while he's doing that, I wanted to give you a care package for your trip. Kisuke said, pulling Ichigo along to his office with Mayuri following. Now, let's see. He exclaimed as he pulled out a really thick carrying case. Now, like Mayuri is complaining about, research and information is key to learning about your enemy. So here is my assignment to you, he said before opening the case, folding out more and more. Chemistry, dissection, engineering sets, computer for data storage and analysis, and a recorder for your thoughts. He held out a voice recorder the size of a pen, pushing the button and playing the message inside. I guess now is as good a time as any. Congratulations on graduating. It cheered in Kisuk's voice. My high school, college, or from Yama's training? Ichigo asked as Kisuk compacted everything again. Any of them, it's just more practical now with what's to come. I want you to learn everything you can about where you will be. The scientist answered as he gave Ichigo his gift. Mayuri came next to Ichigo, still scowling, holding up his own case. I expect you to use these and record the results, he said, revealing the contents to be various chemicals and minerals along with a recipe book for the various drugs and poisons he's devised. Thanks, Ichigo said. I think, he thought as he held the two cases. These should give me something to do in my downtime, he said before leaving the labs, heading for the Kido Corps barracks next. Shino Academy. Still can't believe that he's leaving, Karen growled, waiting for her next class to start. Yuzu and her were in the new, Hollow Combat classroom, and both still reeling from the news Ichigo gave them before he ran off to Hueco Mundo. Isshin tried to control the damage, but none of the women in the Kurosaki family were happy about Ichigo leaving for wherever it was he was going. Yuzu's eyes were still a little puffy from crying. The only benefit the girls had from this was that, for once, everyone in class left them alone. Just you wait, Ichi and I. When you get back, we'll be the strongest in the school. Yeah. Yeah. Yuzu said, cheering up ever so slightly. Let's do it, Karen. Just then the door slammed open, revealing a man with messed up, spiky, reddish-brown hair. Okay, my name's Kano Ashido and I'll be your new teacher. He introduced himself, followed by Yin and Yang. These two are my assistants and welcomes to Hollow Combat. I was once part of a unit that chased a group of Hollows through a Garganta and into Hueco Mundo, where I stayed for centuries fighting and killing Hollows non-stop. Those are my credentials. You will listen and follow my instruction, and you will become stronger Soul Reapers. Understood? He said, hard and firm as he scanned the crowd, immediately identifying Ichigo's sisters. They held the most determined gaze in their eyes, daring him to break them in this course. He could only smile. Good, then let's begin. Yin, Yang, bring in the first test. With that, the two Arankar pulled in a cage full of hollows. Kido Core Base. Ichigo went into the halls of the Spell Masters of Soul Society, hearing a faint hum in the back of his mind. He was looking for Tensai and Hachi, but the calls of the Hogyoku was beginning to distract him, and before he realized it he found himself in the storage room where that sphere was locked away. It slept but still called to him, wishing to reunite with the one it was linked to. He was brought out of his trance by a tap on his shoulder from Tensai. It's enough that you have all the power that you do, Ichigo, the Kido master said. You don't need it for where you're going. Tell it to sleep. Ichigo nodded, refusing to rely on the sphere unless as a last resort. Seconds later, with his intent feeding it, the hums silenced and the Hogyoku was back in its deep rest. Very good. Now let's go, he said as they left the storage to head back to his office. Unfortunately, Ichigo, the only Kido arts left for you to learn are forbidden spells and the hidden arts, neither of which can be passed down without the permission of the Central 46 and the Royal Guard respectively. He then pulled out a pair of thick scrolls. Fortunately, that useless body of bureaucrats is now gone and the old monk insists that you learn all you can. That's oddly convenient, Ichigo replied as he took the scrolls. Then there was a thunderous explosion that rocked the very foundations of the Siriidii. What was that? Ichigo shouted in alarm, seeing a giant tower of flame in the distance. I'm sure it's just the head captain taking care of a few pests. Tensai quickly said. Anyways, you should visit Yoruichi next. She had something she wanted to teach you. Squad 2 training grounds. Ichigo made his way to the sparring fields of the 2nd Division, finding Yoruichi watching Soifon and Tatsuki sparring with each other. Yoruichi noticed him, smiling sweetly to her student, before flashing in front of him with her fist raised. The hybrid was unable to block the sudden attack that sent him flying back and away from the martial artist. He tumbled for a bit before recovering, just in time to receive another flurry of punches from the dark-skinned noble. Been a while since we did this. He thought as he blocked and dodged half of the attacks, while absorbing the other half. She's not holding back, is she? He grunted in pain as she laid another blow into his gut, dampened by his blood. The second she backed away, he threw his own punches. Yoruichi caught them and used the fists as a springboard to jump off and away from the hybrid, Ichigo dashing after her. He managed to reach her before she touched the ground and unleashed his own attacks, slightly slower than hers but with more power behind them. She did a better job at avoiding the attacks, but he managed to get a few in. The last kick he threw she blocked with her crossed arms but was sent flying back, tearing a deep gouge in the ground as she stayed on her feet. That's enough, she said, shaking her arms to relieve the throbbing. Old man's been doing good in teaching you. But, there is one thing he can't teach you. Ready, girls? She asked her 2 students as they stood to Yoruichi's sides. The Keisen uniform of the Onmitsukido commander is without a back or sleeves because of highest level of Hakuda. She explained as they began concentrating their erasure. It's called Shunko, she said as they exploded with power, Ichigo recognizing the high-density Kido flowing into their arms and legs. Channeling Kido into the limbs. Ichigo guessed, analyzing the display as they powered down. I can see how it'd destroy anything on your back and arms. How am I supposed to use that? I wear this Ryatsu suppressant suit for a good reason, Yoruichi. There's been a lot of work in that. Soifon said, presenting him with a new suit and shihakusho. Kiryu Hikifune of the Zero Squad worked with Shutenmaru and Kisuke to weave a new fabric. Mixing the idea of Zaraki's seal, this will devour your erasure and clothe you. If it gets damaged, it will use your erasure to restore itself. Shunko is very powerful and very dangerous, Ichigo. Yoruichi continued as Ichigo took his new shihakusho. I want you to practice it, but try to never need it. Understood. Ichigo returned. Thanks, girls. Now I have to get to Ranjaku. She said she wanted me for something. He said, not noticing Tatsuki's blush. With Yuryu and Chad. Think he still doesn't know? Yuryu asked as he and Chad prepared their bags, filled with clothes and other gadgets for their mission. Orihime and Tatsuki returned to the world of the living to recover a certain someone for the last day while Rukia was with the 2 Arankar. He'd never agree if he did. That's for certain. Chad agreed as he took some medicine that Urahara made to help recover from his use of the now forbidden power in his full brain, thinking back to getting these mission orders. You said it yourself, that Yawatch was sending out Quincy to gather new recruits. So the captain commander is sending you, Orihime, Tatsuki, me and the other living foolbringers out to try and stop them. What I don't quite understand is why he said, Shinigami are locked to this land, like they were restrained to Japan alone. Yuryu continued, trying to figure out what it could mean. Maybe that's why Yawatch accomplished as much as he did. The Godai couldn't get to him. The question is why? Isn't it because the Soul King is here? Chad guessed. Maybe. Maybe there's something else. 2 days later. Ichigo stood before a modified Senkaman, one that was designed to take him to where he was going. He was wearing his new sealing clothes, a ring that was supposed to stabilize his powers to an appropriate level, and a Kido seal that was holding all the stuff that his teachers gave him to use. Yuryu, Chad, Orihime, and Tatsuki had to leave, travel the world, before him. He said his goodbyes as they left Soul Society. Now all of his remaining friends in the Godai stood there with him as he prepared for his journey. Remember Ichigo, you are there to learn. Not to intervene. Yamamoto reminded him. I understand sensei. He said as the Senkamen opened. Tia, Nell, tell those knights of mine to behave themselves. The Arrancar nodded. Ruki dash, he started before said Soul Reaper pulled him down for a kiss. When they separated, Ranjiku did the same, with Senna jumping on him for hers after that. I'm so proud of that boy. Isshin said, earning a slap from Masaki. Take care of yourself, son. I will. Ichigo said, dashing headfirst into the Senkamen. He felt ready for anything it could throw at him. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Pest Control. This is the end. A former C-46 judge declared, several of his colleagues and an army of outlaws standing ready. With that Dmed abomination Ichigo disappearing, we shall restore the order of the Siriidii and Godai 13. You will all be dash. Enetsu Jigaku. Yamamoto said, having listened to enough before deciding to act. A column of flame erupted from beneath the assembled group and burned them to ash. That was quite gratifying. How long have I waited to do that? Quincy in London. With Yuryu. The young Quincy was sitting on a double-decked bus, passing through the streets of the city, rubbing his fingers along the badge he was given solely for this trip. He was in his Quincy-fashioned Soul Reaper garb, blending in better than if he wore his usual white, reflecting on the mission he was given. His friends were all around the world, searching for Quincy belonging to the Vandenrake, while he was told to go find any information he could in the only other likely place to have information on the enemy. The western branch of Soul Society, located in the hidden side of London. This close to his destination, he couldn't help but think back to when he was told about this. Flashback. Yuryu, you're going to London to look for any information on Yawatch in the western branch of Soul Society. Isshin told the Quincy, handing him a badge in the shape of a shield with SSMB on the face and a coin with the same shield emblem. Yamamoto sent them a message to expect your coming, but you should still be careful. Considering the mess that Yawatch's Quincy made, believe that you'll be walking on eggshells the entire time. He finished, finally giving Yuryu the chance to ask. Western branch of Soul Society? He asked, never hearing of multiple branches of the afterlife. It did make sense though, since the Soul Society he knew only covered Japan while mankind was all over the world. What do the Shinigami call themselves there? They're not actually Soul Reapers Yuryu and they don't really deal with the dead. Isshin said, confusing the archer. In these cases Yuryu, they're closer to what the Quincy could have been had there not been such intense animosity between Shinigami and Quincy. They see that which is meant to be unseen and protect the normal living folk from the monsters. I personally haven't been there myself, but I've heard that you'll be dealing with witches, wizards, and dragons. Flashback end. This coin is supposed to get me to this reverse London place. Yuryu thought, now fiddling with the coin as he made his way to where he sensed a strong concentration of erasure. It felt similar to a Senkamen gate, but there was also two more notable presences there. Were they the members of Reverse London, or were they dragons? Either way, he felt obligated to act and began running to his apparent destination. It was a run-down abandoned alley, the kind no one would spare a second glance down, with an enormous classic-style dragon with pitch-black scales digging its head in a hole where he heard two people screaming. So that's a dragon. Yuryu said, analyzing the beast. Not exactly at a Minos level, but I should still be careful. Pull through this Osushi, because I'll definitely protect you. He heard one of the people yell out as he grabbed a seal Schneider. In an instant, he formed a blade and charged toward the serpent. The blade easily cut through the scales and flesh of the beast, causing it to cry out in pain. When he did that, a column of light rings appeared behind the dragon, with two girls in school uniforms coming out of it. There it is. The dark dragon. One of them yelled out, a girl with blonde pigtails. With her was another girl with long black hair that seemed completely disinterested. Both were riding smaller creatures that seemed like dragon-modeled kites. "Hey, what's that down there?" the blonde girl asked as the dragon swiped its tail at Yuryu, forcing him to jump back. "Is that a dash?" "Noelle. Show me your panties." the dragon roared out, surprising everyone. Yuryu was still processing what the dragon roared out when the girl, Noelle. He thought, starting calling out for someone named Balgo. "Noelle is flying." One of the guys, dirty blonde hair with a dark hoodie and pants holding a small dog, cried out while his buddy looked on in shock. He wasn't the interesting one, that would be the other guy. A stocky man with curly black hair, and a pitch black spirit ribbon when Yuryu looked at it. "Forget this. Balgo, let's get out of here." The stocky guy yelled out as he turned and ran. "This is getting crazy." The blonde witch started flying toward the fleeing man. "Stop. I think that's Dash." "Wait, Niney, the tracker says there are two Dash." Yuryu and the other witch called out, just as the human's head burst into some weird spiral maw, with Niney in the middle of its mouth. The witch barely managed to get out of the new dragon's mouth, getting a badly broken arm in the process. "I thought I could split you all up and pick you off one by one." The human form peeled off like a reptile exploding out of its skin, revealing an amorphous beast with a cone-shaped head that unwound like a screw. The dragon turned its attention to Yuryu. "You don't smell like a wizard. What are you?" The panty dragon behind Yuryu soon exploded as the other witch got next to Yuryu. "That's what I want to know too," she said, holding up some odd-looking flintlock pistol at the dragon. "He's a Quincy Noelle," Niney accused, shocking the black-haired witch. "A member of the race that DMN near destroyed the balance of souls." Niney pointed her gun at Yuryu, who kept his focus on the dragon. For all their "kill them all" attitude toward their monsters, you'd think they'd manage to clean up the mess of you BSTRDS. "And you should remember to prioritize your targets," Yuryu said, shoving the witch out of the way while the dragon's mouth unwound to try and eat both her and him. Yuryu reinforced his body with blood venom, letting the teeth of the dragon scrape harmlessly on his skin, before backhanding the beast away from him. And back toward Niney, which the dragon was capitalizing on by attempting to eat her now. She was shoved out of the way by Balgo, who got his back torn up by fangs, as he looked to the dragon and recoiled in shock at seeing the beast for the first time. "You should have run, Balgo," the dragon said, almost sounding sorry for its friend. "If this is the quality of opponents I can expect to face, then I am severely disappointed," Yuryu taunted, before the dragon was reduced to nothing by a single arrow shot from a small bow in the Quincy's hand. He turned back around, to come face to face with a pair of toyish pistols. "You're explaining what the hell is going on, Quincy?" Niney demanded while Noelle kept her calm. "Make it snappy before we shoot you," she threatened, only to instantly be disarmed and restrained while Noelle was kicked into the side of a building. "Both of you have ranged weapons." Yuryu started lecturing as he planted a foot on the witch's neck and readied his bow to shoot the other one. "You never stand too close to your target unless you want to gamble your reflexes against theirs. As for what I'm doing here, do either of you know the name Yuryu Ishida?" he asked, getting no answer from either witch. Suddenly Noelle's phone started going off, playing a Dragon Ball theme, and she looked to the Quincy. Yuryu nodded and she answered her phone. "Chief, we have a situation here," she immediately said into her phone, uncaring about the Quincy aiming his bow at her. "Does it involve a Quincy?" A man's voice responded back, surprising the witch. "I just heard about it myself and I still can't believe the news. Ask him for identification." Noelle looked back to Yuryu. "Do you have an ID?" she asked, surprising the other witch under Yuryu's heel. Without releasing his bow, Yuryu dug out the badge he was given specifically for this mission and tossed it to Stoic Witch. She caught it and began reading off the information. "Soul Society, Main Branch, Yuryu Ishida. Squad 15 Lieutenant. How the hell is a Quincy a member of that ghost club? Nine demanded. And there's only 13 squads. Soul Society has undergone some changes in the last year. Yuryu answered, removing his foot and helping the girl up, also ignoring her indignant cries as he quickly reset her arms so the bones would be back in their proper place. He began walking to Noelle, who put her phone on speaker. Do you know why I'm here? Can't say that I do. This is the first anyone here has heard from that Soul Society in centuries. The man responded. I only heard we were expecting a high-ranking member of the Godii to visit. I was only told that person was a Quincy after I sent those two to eliminate the dark dragons in the area and you appeared on the radar. Well, the Godii has been undergoing several reforms over the past year. Yuryu started to explain. All because the Quincy Emperor is still alive and the war is coming back. A terrified silence washed over everyone. Except for Balgo, who had no idea what was happening. I'm here because the Captain Commander thinks that the West Branch has some information that might prove useful. Why would a Quincy turn against his own kind? The blonde witch asked, glaring at Yuryu. Because even I know the kind of monster Yoruichi is and want to stop him. The Quincy answered. Fine, welcome to Reverse London. The chief finally said. Naihashi, Ninei, you two are being reassigned to his escort. The old man in charge of the Godii seems to trust that Quincy, might as well let him do his job. And if he does anything funny, contact the Sabers. Neither of you can take on someone that earned the rank of lieutenant in the Godii. Ninei got mad, snatched the phone away, and began yelling at her boss, who brushed everything she said aside. Is this normal? Yuryu asked of Noelle, who could only nod and confirm it. And here I thought I was finally going to escape this. Happens a lot with your group? She asked. My captain is a man-child that only does work when we force him to his desk and when he's protecting the city. And he's been worrying about Lisa ever since he got on that plane to London. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers, Quincy. Differences. So in short, we are still living and have a constant flow of new ideas on how to deal. We domesticate and tame our beasts, and we didn't need almost 2,000 years of stagnation to decide to change something. Ninei bragged while Yuryu looked through a history book dating back to Yoruichi's kingdom. But, I'll give those Soul Reaper barbarians this. They finally decided to stop killing everything. So why do you kill dark dragons? Yuryu asked, surprising the blonde, but she was still able to answer. Because they're dangerous monsters that will kill innocent people. Now can you imagine if all dragons were like that? Yuryu returned, shocking the witch. If they couldn't be tamed and just continued to kill and eat without end? That's our problem with hollows and it's why we just kill them all. The only change to that was after horrific and illegal experiments by someone that wanted to conquer the whole world, and they are included because hollows would be useful against Quincy, which also threaten the balance of souls. He closed the book, putting it on the table before grabbing the next. There's the difference. You have the leeway we can't afford. Ninei couldn't respond as she tried to imagine if all dragons were like dark dragons. Haunted one. So. Someone want to explain this? Yuryu asked, pointing to Balgo, who now had a leash and collar around his neck. Well, the kid was bitten by a dragon and became what we call a haunted one. Said the witch's boss, Billy Banks Jr., a man in a green cap and jacket with very shaggy hair and a crooked cigarette in his mouth. Biologically, they're classified as a type of dragon and therefore under our care. Like a pet? Yuryu guessed, looking at the boy in question. Because the Arankar have way more dignity than that. Noelle, show me your panties. The dog on Balgo's head suddenly said, causing the witch to start chasing him with intent to kill. I think I prefer Mayuri to this place. Yuryu decided. What's happening in Soul Society? Project Spearhead's progress. Kisuke Urahara was making his rounds around the labs and barracks of Squad 12, checking in on the progress of the various projects and experiments the Shinigami Ran D were in charge of. Ichigo's excursion into the new dimension certainly was a boon for ideas with those imperial arms, but full recreations of them were impossible due to the lack of the same materials used in their construction. That, however, was a challenge that Urahara and Mayuri relished. Now if only some of the other captains and lieutenants would help out as well. Kisuke figured Soifon would jump at improving the lethality of her Suzumabachi, but the Wasp refused any tampering, both Soul Reaper and Zanpakuto. I get the risks with that Murasame blade, but she's the captain of the assassination unit. He growled while heading to the revived Mod Soul branch. Once he entered, he found rows of dozens of bodies in tubes of all varieties. Along the middle were rows of monitors and computers with what squad members and scientists he could spare, with Nozomi Kujo at the head of it all. "Alright, everyone ready?" She called out, wearing a lab coat over her shihakusho, which for some reason had a miniskirt. Not a lot of complaints about that, nor did work slow down. Not since he threatened that anyone who slacked off would be sent to Mayuri's playground as a new test subject. "Okay, armor shift test #begin." Suddenly, one of the tubes on the right side glowed red as the body inside started to shift and mutate. Some parts got a metallic sheen while others got bulkier, like thick plate armor, then the body began bleeding. "Shut it down." The vedette sighed, slumping in her chair. "What's the damage?" "Torn muscles, tendons, and ligaments, perforated lungs, ruptured heart, cranial hemorrhaging, fractured spine and other bones all throughout, and the guts can be best described as pulp, ma'am," one person reported. Nozomi released a growl of frustration. "At least it didn't explode this time," she said, finally noticing her captain. "How can I help you, Kisuke?" "Please make it quick, it's been a rough week." "So I've noticed," he commented, looking over the reports that was sent to him over the course of the experiments. "I'll try to get back to Ichigo on sending us more concrete samples of the Taigu. We've just recently got our hands on some internal organs from someone whose Taigu was literally her blood. Mayuri is experimenting with it now and I'll send Ichigo some jigai as recompense. He did mention that he's got some recruits finally." Just then, a loud crash and metal tearing sounded out throughout the base, followed by several pained cries. And one joyous "Success! Ahahaha!" Mayuri sang. For reasons most of the squad could only guess. "Did you finish that one for the Aaron car?" "It's in the back, sir," Nozomi said as most of her team got back to work. One unlucky sap drew the short straw and was stuck cleaning the bloodied tube. Government change of Soul Society. Ugh. This is so boring. Kakaku groaned out, pouring herself another cup of sake while she, Yashiro, and Byakuya continued to work. Soon after Rigai debacle finally ended, Yamamoto killed the members of the Central 46 that planned a coup in a desperate act to retain their power and authority, which now necessitated the act of putting the new democratic government into action. 5 elected officials for every district to discuss law and economics, 2 more from every district to form a separate representative house to handle things between districts of each region, and another 8 plus the captain of Squad 14 to govern the Rukon as a whole. Finally, another 4 to represent each region and attend meetings with the heads of the great noble houses and chairman of the house, who govern civil actions in the Siriidii. Altogether, this group would ensure every district had a voice. For the judicial side, 1 judge per district, 5 per region, and 9 for the Siriidii, all elected by the people for the Rukon and appointed by votes of the Godii for the Siriidii. So why were these 3 great noble heads meeting? Found another crime lord, Yashiro announced, holding up a report from the Onmitsukido. The reason for this meeting was to plan the future elections and eventual first meeting of the new government, and as one should expect there were a few shady characters looking to get more power and authority. Drag trafficking, child abuse, unethical workplace, the usual. Yamamoto ordered them to ensure only clean record and sound character officials could be elected to their respective position, advised by the Siriidii judges on the current laws, or as close as they can get. I forget, are BRTHLS illegal? Only if they discriminate gender, ignore employee consent, offer no healthcare or birth control, and have substandard work-living conditions. Byakuya droned out. As distasteful as I find such establishments, we must take it slow to fully civilize the Soul Society. Gladiator arenas. Given a pass as killing and crippling is forbidden and considered good training to get into one of the Shinigami starter schools around the Rokon. Kokaku answered, chugging her sake from the bottle as they barely make a dent in the paperwork. We're gonna die in here, aren't we? Kenpachi versus Kenpachi. It's been a while since he was down here, dropping into the final dark level of the Muken prison cell. The endless expanse of dark oblivion where only few were ever permitted, either by imprisonment or to train without restraint. The last time he was here was for neither of these reasons, but to enjoy his time with his predecessor and now wife, Yachiru Retsu Unohana. Now he's back, not for imprisonment or training, but for an execution. To kill the only man still imprisoned in the Muken. You can show yourself at any time. Zaraki called out into the darkness. The only way out of here is through me. He pulled out a tag before placing it on the elevator, immediately wrapping it in burning rapier reminiscent of Ichigo's own rapier. And you'll have to kill me to get out. Soon he heard footsteps that revealed their master as a man that was more slim than Byakuya Kachiki. He was close to a foot shorter than Zaraki and looked more like a member of royalty rather than the captain of Squad 11, with a long ponytail and framing bangs of dark purple hair. So, you're the 8th Kenpachi. Soya Azashiro, Kenpachi Zaraki. The man answered. Kenpachi Azashiro, the 8th holder of the title Kenpachi, sealed away in the Muken after staging a coup, and it took the entire royal guard at the time to best him and lock him away. This was 1,000 years ago, his Zanpakuto was never found and he still looked as healthy as the day before his revolt. So what brings a brute like yourself down here again? He asked, looking down on the savage while planning an attack. Are you here to offer me a chance at freedom if I choose to fight with Soul Society against the Quincy? That's certainly one option I'm here to give. Zaraki stated, not at all surprised with the knowledge the prisoner displayed. The other is that I execute you. So why don't you do us both a favor and submit? The prisoner sighed and shook his head. I have been listening and watching, but do you really expect me to just bow my head to a child? He asked, thinking back to his shock when Yamamoto named Ichigo his intended successor. I have sensed his power, but I refuse to acknowledge a brat like him as my better. If you make me the head captain of the Godii, I might consider it. Zaraki nodded his head. I understand. He said before unsheathing his blade and dashing at the former Kenpachi, slamming his blade down and creating a thunderous earth-shaking crash. I said this was going to be an execution anyway. Azashiro flashed back and Zaraki felt something move across his chest. Did you just try to cut me? He asked, seeing the former Kenpachi look on in shock. If you did, then it was weak. This is a cut. He said as he held his Zanpakuto in both hands and swung his blade, stopping just shy of striking the ground. There was an explosion of force and air, creating a notable dust storm in the prison cell, and an air blade that barely missed Azashiro. The prisoner looked on in shock at the display of power as the air around Zaraki burned with his Ryatsu, giving the impression of a burning skull behind him. Come on. You once held the title of Kenpachi. Make this entertaining. He ordered, smiling savagely at his opponent. What is he? Azashiro thought as fear crept back up into his being, a feeling he thought he had long since disposed of. Mozo. He said, creating hundreds of mouths and hands around them with each one chanting the incantation of a high-level Heido and creating a black box around Zaraki. Heido number 90, Kurohitsuji. He finished before the Kido exploded, revealing an unscathed Zaraki. That child's spells have more punch to them than that did. The Kenpachi said, flicking his sword after destroying those Heido with a single swing. Is that really all you've got? He demanded, the former Kenpachi racking his brain trying to come up with something that could actually hurt the monster before him. What a disappointment. He said, resting his blade on his shoulder. If you won't bring out your Zanpakuto, I'll force you to. Drink, Noza dash, he started before feeling something against his tongue before Asashiro cried out in pain. Oh. I get it now. When you told the Central 46 that you've already shown your Zanpakuto, you meant it was still active. Everything around you is your Zanpakuto. That is the power of my Yoryu Zakuro. Asashiro admitted. With it, I can merge with anything, turn anything into my blade or my shield, use as many Kido as I want at the same time. I'm not just merged with the air and the Mukin, I'm merged with the whole of Soul Society. And despite all that power, you've never escaped or even hurt me. Guess there are limits to what you can do after all. Zaraki taunted, earning a glare from the former Kenpachi. I said to make this entertaining, if you don't pull out all the stops to fight me then I'll kill you quickly. The captain threatened, shortly before Asashiro began to fade away. Zaraki needed a second to compose himself from the sudden disappearance of the prisoner, then his head snapped upward and he jumped. Rocketing himself up to the proper height, he swung his blade and cut the very air. Asashiro reformed and screamed in pain as blood spilled from a massive cut on his chest, followed by Zaraki grabbing his leg and throwing him back to the ground. Did you just try to run away? The Kenpachi growled as he landed next to his opponent. How did you cut me? Asashiro demanded, feeling in mortal danger for the first time in his long life. I was one with air. Let me remind you of what I am. Zaraki said as he placed his foot on the former Kenpachi's chest. I was a nameless runt from the furthest and most lawless district of the Rukon, killing and fighting was all I knew and how I survived. No one was stronger than me, no one could even hurt me, not until after I fought her. Kenpachi Yachiru, the first to bear our title. He pointed to the lone scar he had over his eye. That was the first time I ever enjoyed myself in a fight and the first time I was afraid when I almost killed her. I weakened myself to an embarrassing degree in an effort to enjoy as many fights as I could. Then one day I found a little girl, she did not fear me or reject me, and I would choose to name her after the only person I respected and take the title of Kenpachi as my name. I killed the previous Kenpachi in a single strike, became a captain with no training and no access to the true power of my Zanpakuto. I've stayed like that for so long until I met a certain kid, a kid that welcomed my challenge, a kid that freed me of my greatest fear, a kid that grew into a warrior I'd be proud to follow into hell itself if he asked, because he promised me all the fun I could ever ask for. I am the Kenpachi, the strongest soul reaper of the Godai, and that brat is Ichigo Kurosaki, the future captain commander of the Godai. There is nothing that can stand against either of us. He stepped off of Asashiro and pulled the man to his feet. Now as a courtesy of one Kenpachi to another, I'll let you die on your feet. One last strike. He said, taking a kendo stance and holding his sword in both hands. Asashiro glared at Zaraki before releasing a sigh. I suppose that's the best offer I'll get. He finally said before holding out his hand. Slowly, an Aswachi blade formed in his grip. Let's do this. Despite how plain the sword looked, it radiated with power. Likely the concentrated amount of erasure that it took for him to merge with the whole of Soul Society during his long years of imprisonment. The two raised their blades, charged, and swung, creating a massive explosion of force and power that rocked the Siriidii high above them. When the dust finally settled, Kenpachi sheathed his blade and Asashiro fell to the ground. The life of the eighth Kenpachi was ended. Soul Society tried to forget you, but no more. You will be remembered. Zaraki promised as he returned to the elevator, tearing off the Kido tag that created its barrier. Soul Society is done hiding from its past. Other Quincy preparations. Hey, is this safe? A guy strapped to a table asked, nervous and terrified as Mayuri typed away a few commands at his station. He had to pause his other project while they cleared out the ice and repaired the damage done, but still had many other projects to work on in the meantime. Who cares? Mayuri responded before pulling a switch. Besides, you're a death row inmate so it doesn't really matter. The man screamed in horror and pain as the chamber was flooded with hollow erasure. Seconds passed, filled with screams of pain and torment, before finally falling silent as the man faded from existence. After an extensive analysis done on Yuryu and BG9, Urahara and Mayuri figured out how to make artificial Quincy while using the squad 15th lieutenant as a base. The experiment was multipurpose in testing an idea as a countermeasure against the Quincy of the Vandenrake. Effectiveness against the Quincy, the effects it would have on other souls and Shinigami, the effects on Arrancar, and how Ichigo's own erasure would affect the experiment. If the results were as Mayuri and Kisuke predict, they'd either get asset denial or potentially boost Ichigo's powers as a result. No question that what they were doing was one of the most vile war crimes, but Yawatch was not known for his humanity. The old guard of the Godii were ruthless for a reason. Next one is ready, Master Mayuri. Nimue said, sounding more monotone than usual. Recently made Arrancar from a random hollow. She brought in a blonde man with a helmet mask fragment. Something wrong, Nimue? He asked in a rare display of concern, knowing her attitude might affect her performance. I miss SEC with my boyfriend. She said, making Mayuri sigh in Konitanu with his very unethical experiments.